Well, I made the joke 2 weeks ago to Paul. I said, I'm so good at filling this show that if we ever get any actual real XFL news, we might have to do like a double episode, or we might have to go to 2 days a week. And Paul was terrified at that thought, but here we are. We have real XFL news. And Ernesto, would you believe that before you even sit down today, I think Paul and I have an hour and 20 minutes of content already recorded for today. So no matter what we do, talking about all the stuff that's currently happening, we have a lot of stuff that we've gone through. So it should be a good episode. Ernesto, why don't you just say hi, and then I have my little spiel I want to get into at the start here. We have Ernesto Lacayo of the XFL Dragons, among a myriad of other teams, right? Arizona Rattlers, played for everyone in the past. So why don't you say hi, and then I have my little spiel before we get in here.
Hey, everyone. Glad to be on here and co-hosting the show. So pretty exciting, and let's have some fun.
Yeah, so Paul is currently going under the knife. He's getting some dental surgery. We're coming off our biggest episode ever. I said Ernesto was on our Christmas episode. Huge reception for that, and obviously being a Dragons fan. So I said, we want to see if Ernesto would come on. He said, of course, it would be an honor. I'm going to say this today. We're coming off our biggest episode we've ever had, double at least any other views we've ever had. If you like the work that we're trying to do, we've got interviews, on all sides with everything today. Please like and subscribe. xflshow.com/YouTube takes you right to the page. We've added, I think, 45 subscribers this week. Paul wanted me to make sure I mentioned we are doing our giveaway. So when we hit 1,000 subscribers, which we need to do to get monetized, that's the goal, so we can start getting paid back for some of this YouTube stuff. We have a Chad Ochocinco, friend of the show. Chad Ochocinco signed a game ball that we're going to give away. Plus, I have a bunch of old random, messed up merch and stuff that we had along the way. So please, xflshow.com/YouTube. And if you see the podcast, share it. Give it a thumbs up. We have lots of comments on the YouTube. So please, we're really trying to do the Lord's work here. I don't have Paul today to call me out for using the cliches, but we have all spent so much time this week. Ernesto, first off, I guess I'm going to go through just the rundown of the show, and then I want to get your thoughts on all the CFL stuff. So Ernesto and I are going to break down kind of the most recent stuff with Kenneth Farrow, with the United Football Players Association, talking about the CFL. We have Paul and I have an interview with Kenneth Farrow. He's going to come on the show, talk all about what they were trying to do, come across with everything with their statements this week. We have a lengthy interview with Rod Pedersen from CFL, or not from CFL, but from Canadian, football radio. Very, very animated interview. Then Ernesto and I are going to come back. I got a bunch of different statements and stuff from all the CFL stuff. We're going to talk about, there is actually other XFL news this week, if you could believe it. We're going to talk about Spring League updates. Ernesto's got indoor football stuff. We're going to talk about Spring League or Fan Control football. And we even have, to bury the show, Super Bowl champion Robert Turbin. We have an interview with him coming up as well. So this literally could be a 2.5 hour episode, all said and done. So just, sit tight. And like I said, please like and subscribe if you can. What do you think about all the news and stuff that we have today, Ernesto?
I mean, it's just coming so fast with all these different, sources coming out in the news, and hearing the CFL and the XFL wanting to merge or just in talks. As a player perspective, we're looking at it like, all right, they got the ball rolling somewhere here, and we're just hoping, at the end of the tunnel, we see something happen. We're just hoping that things aren't, pushed back, or, because a lot of us free agents, we're all still training, living our lives, and trying to make our dreams come true as well. So we're hopefully that some of this news gets cleared up and that things get going pretty soon.
Yeah, so to start off today, Mike Mitchell just came out with an article, XFL News Hub. I just shared it on Twitter. He does not feel good about an XFL 2022 season at all. We had talked about that last week, and that there might be just too much to do with the CFL and everything. What do you think, as someone that was in the last iteration of the XFL? Obviously, you're going to be playing in the Indoor Football League, right, coming up here soon. We're going to get into all that. What do you think about that news of potentially really being hard for them to get the timeline going this year?
It's not surprising. I mean, we've seen, a lot of leagues come and go, trying to rush things, and it's always good to, plan things ahead, and hopefully they organize things pretty well. But from a player, you're just thinking, you see that kind of news, you're like 2022, all right, trying to gear up for that. But then you see a 2023, that's going to be, detrimental for a lot of the guys trying to do something, having to put their lives on hold and just seeing what the other outcomes are going to be. So looking ahead, it's just one of those things where you're scratching your head, wondering, okay, what's really going on? What news is really true? And we're just hoping that, The Rock or anyone else in the ownership group come out and just give us something, just a little bit more something, more security, just so that we know and that we can plan ahead and keep our training and our dreams alive.
It's tough. So we had back when The Rock bought everything, we had Cole Boozer on the show. DC Defenders. He's a friend of the show as well, and that was his take. This was like a year ago now when they said, "Hey, we're going to do in 2022," and he said the same thing. God, there's a lot of these players that have been waiting that this is their last shot before they're going to maybe transition to do something else, and so even at that time it was detrimental, and we were talking, this was back in September whenever they made that announcement about the 2022. So now here we are with 2023. I mean, have you talked with players? I know that you were just hanging out with Matt Mangle and Taylor and all the other kickers and stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I want to hear about that as well, because I saw a very cryptic tweet this week from Matt Mangle talking about stuff you guys are working on. But I mean, what has been the reaction? I mean, here we are, we're just internet podcast people. I mean, you're a player, you've been in the league, you've been talking with players. What do you think what's the reaction to pushing back another year?
I mean, a lot of us, when we come and train, there's always gossip here, and there's no different than a couple of guys going out to play golf, and everyone's exchanging news and all that stuff. And for all of us to be in that one spot a couple of days ago in training is very rare. Everyone's doing their thing in different parts of the country. And, as we're all talking CFL, talking XFL, we are under the same, I should say, same platform as far as not knowing what's going to happen. We keep hearing from our respective teams, just to hang tight and news will come out. But when that's being said, month or maybe a week or two later, things change. Every day seems to be something a little bit different. But for all of us to come together, even different characters and different egos come around, but just work on our craft is the most beautiful thing. But we all decided to take that picture not too long ago because we're like, well, if we really want to stir the pot going on here, let's see what happens. Take a picture with CFL, IFL, XFL, and free agents just coming together and hopefully we get things going, because as players, we're working every single day, working our jobs, training, beating up our bodies just to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully something comes out. But we're all in the same boat as everybody else. Even as a player, we would like to know a little bit more, but no, we're all in the same boat right now.
Yeah, I was thinking I want to get Matt on the show here coming up at some point soon, because he's got the CFL tie as well. And I all I do right now, we're friends. I'll tweet him like my Call of Duty, how well I'm doing on that. But obviously talented. So the big news this week, I mean, we did all the XFL-CFL stuff last week. Kenneth Farrow, United Football Players Association, on Tuesday, came out and they said that they had been talking with sources that they basically that they didn't know if the 2021 season was going to happen for the CFL nor the 2022 season. And man, that went crazy. Wildfire. Canadian Football Players Association came back. The CFL came back. We had already scheduled Rod to come on the show. I had already talked to him over the weekend. I go, hey man, we want to get the Canadian perspective. He saw the Kenneth stuff. He went crazy about it. I mean, it was just literally wildfire, all day on that. What did you think when you saw that come out?
Love Kenneth, a great teammate of mine. And, he knows a lot more than I do when it comes to, understanding what the league and the process of what's going on. But when I saw that come out, I'm just like, I just hope, everyone is on the same page. The sources are there and someone is saying, something that's credible, because if I've seen in the past with AFL, IFL, and other leagues that I've been in, is that once something comes out, you got to be ready for the fire to come out, because you're stirring the pot there, and sometimes you start it starts kind of like pulling away from the real actual news that's going to happen.
Yep.
And that's what kills a lot of the things as far as the steam going. Because I think before all that was coming out this last week, I think the XFL was on a nice little run here. But I knew in the back of my mind that, hey, there might be something that pops out, whether a picture like how we took, or just some news that just came out that's going to really blow up. And that's where you got to be very, very careful. But like I said, Kenneth is a great guy, great running back, great teammate, and he knows a lot. And so, I have all my respect for him, and he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, it's just tough, and we Kenneth's going to be on the show here coming up, sharing his side. I get what they were trying to do, not wanting to put, hey, if you're a potential CFL player, if you don't pay, you're not going to get, if you don't play, you're not going to get paid, right? So just,
Right.
if you need to have some trepidation, just, I know that that's what they were trying to do. It went crazy. I feel bad, the one thing we've learned in the last 2 weeks, with the CFL stuff, CFL fans, people are really passionate about it. And I absolutely understand that. And we've said on the podcast, we are a strictly football fans. I don't care. We're not XFL rule marks. We're not CFL 3 downs or dumb. I want to see football. I want to see good football. And so that's kind of where we're at. The news came out, CFL dismissed it. They said the claims being made in our name in the upcoming season are false. The CFL PA president sent out a memo. He said there's an organization called the UFPA, United Football Players Association, purporting to have knowledge of the CFL are bargaining and the status of the 2021-2022 seasons. They do not. The only credible information should come from your player reps or the CFPA office directly. Today's statement has created unnecessary distractions as we remain focused on the 2021 season. Our advice to you when seeking information is to contact the Players Association. When you're a player and you're in these leagues and stuff, is there a lot of clarity in communication? Is that something that you feel like Kenneth and them have a role to keep people up to date? Or how does that work when you're someone in the leagues and trying to get like, when are we going to be here? What's going on? What are the statuses of everything?
It all depends on the organization, what league and has an established players union. And based on that, it's just a matter of who's in charge and who's really, really focused on what they're doing and their work to be able to get all that information out to us. But for the most part, as a player, you hope that those player unions are there for the best interest of the league and also for the players, and as well as the news. So we get our information from our player reps. Is the best communication there all the time? Not necessarily. Also depends on the organization, because some of these guys with the player reps are actually players, and they're having to focus on their craft and work at them every single day. So it's a lot of pressure, a lot of time, very time consuming. So that's how it really works in most leagues. I mean, I've been part of player union like in the AFL that no longer exists. That was one of the worst ones I ever been part of, honestly. And the communication was not there, and you got the news as fast as everyone else did, which in most cases the players should know first, players, coaches, and staff members. But that's usually how it works.
Yeah, I just think it's so hard because, time is such of the essence here. If the CFL is going to be kicking off, if these training camps are going to happen, it really is like we kind of need to know, right? And if you're players,
right.
You really need to know because this is your livelihood. I mean, I guess that's the thing that's being lost in all of this, and it is so great to have a player on is, we're talking, okay, what are we going to watch? What are we going to cover? I mean, this is your guys' livelihoods. I mean, this is how you're putting food on the table. I mean, is there obviously there's an extra level of pressure on that. I mean, what is that if you're waiting and where you've been a part of some of these leagues that have made it and not, I mean, what is it like going through that and the ups and downs?
Yeah, it's frustrating because as you said, it's hard for us as players just knowing what the future holds in store for us, because we're trying to prepare for our next life's work, or also just be able to compete at a high level because, every single day or every single year, I should say, there's a younger player coming in the league. And then as you get older, you're having to fight against these guys and just to be able to sustain your job and to be to put food on the table. That puts an added pressure because a lot of guys don't work in the off season because they're focusing on their craft and other guys like myself who work almost full time, just be able to balance both, the craft, the sport, and work is very difficult. And just not knowing is crucial for us. Is just trying to get something going because we need a plan. And whether it starts tomorrow, whether it starts next week, we need to know something so that we can build our bodies, build our mindsets, and to be able to worry about that league, worry about that season, so that in the future we're all going to be good and set. Because it's better, I always say, it's better to be prepared and not have an opportunity than to have an opportunity not prepared.
Yeah, I really don't know how you guys do it, and especially these alternate football. I mean, we've been covering fan control football, and spring league is going to be coming back, and they're supposedly going to be doing the May thing. I mean, I just can't imagine. It's one thing, for me to like get up on here. Okay, I got to do a podcast. Okay, what's going on? I mean, just to be physically ready to go, and then also just emotionally and mentally going through that. I mean, I just can't imagine like having to be up on both of those things. I mean, it just really seems like it would be really taxing to go year after year of dealing with all that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, just the fact that for me to play in the XFL, it wasn't something I was preparing for. I was getting ready for the next IFL season, and I was not mentally prepared for that. But when the call comes, you have to be prepared mentally, physically, and be able to perform in front of the coaches for them to like you and to sign you on the job and right on the spot. And, I was lucky to be able to do that. But a lot of younger guys, they need years and more experiences to go through that kind of thing. Because, I mean, earlier in my career, if the XFL would have called me when I was 21, 22, I would have not been ready. I would have not been ready up here and physically. And we think that we are physically at a young age, but in reality, you're not. There's so many years that come with the preparation and the wisdom that prepare you for these kind of things. And so it's no different than preparing for a league. I know all these individuals who are high up in the league right now and just trying to really get things going, because I know it's not easy. And my hat's off to the XFL 2.0, I should say, right now, that got it going. Because as a player, when I got there, I was like, this is amazing. The fans, especially you guys were there for the Washington game, the first game, it was amazing from day one to the last day we were there. So we can appreciate all that, all the preparation. But as of right now, with them saying putting things on hold, oh man, it's brutal. It's brutal for not only the fans, but not only the ones working in the organizations, but for players.
Yeah, so we're gonna. I want to dump into our Kenneth interviews now and our Rod interviews. So Paul and I recorded these earlier. Kenneth, the United Football Players Association, came on, and then we have a really long, extended interview with Rod. Now, I'm gonna warn CFL fans. Rod's a little fired up, right? Rod's a little fired up. So just. We'll come back. We'll talk about stuff on the other side, but I really appreciate, fire and things being brought on. I like hot takes. We like hot takes on the podcast. So we're going to take a break. We're going to put in these interviews, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about some more. We got reactions from Pat McAfee. We got reactions from other, June Jones, of course, is making the news again. So we'll come back and do all that after this. How we going, sir?
Hydrated. Stay hydrated, sir.
Dragon Nation, man. I see you got everything in the background.
We're going good. We got your good friend Ernesto coming up too. I assume you guys are friends. Ernesto coming up here. He's going to co-host with me. Paul's got dental surgery today, so Ernesto's coming on here in a little bit. So, we're very, very Dragons heavy today.
There we go. Nothing wrong with it.
What? Wait, what? Sorry, I chose the Wildcats, so that's where my loyalties lie. Welcome to the show, man. We appreciate you coming on short notice after everything that happened this week with the CFL, the XFL, and the UFPA releasing a statement.
Yeah, no, I appreciate y'all. Showing support and offering the platform. It's been a long kind of year of just being not employed because of COVID. I think everybody's facing tough situations and guys trying to navigate how they're going to go about continuing their careers. So glad to be able to come on here and shine a little light on some of the stuff that's going on.
Yeah. So first off, so we talked with Rod Pedersen already. You know, I know that he had some hot takes. We recorded with him on Tuesday, and I kind of filled him in on who you guys are. We've obviously been following you guys since last year when everything was starting to go. But for listeners here, that are hearing this kind of in the order of everything happening in the podcast, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you guys are, and specifically just kind of your background and getting into that.
Yeah, definitely. I think first, there was, all types of stuff getting thrown around yesterday, and I think we tried to kind of refrain from responding to a lot of things because we understand that. Well, first off, we're not a union, and so there was a lot of who are these guys? Are they a union and this and that? Unfortunately, we are not in a position to even have a players union because we don't have an employer. And that has been the case for the past 2 years. So it's really just been a collective body of the players from the past 2 seasons coming together and realizing that, hey, we missed out on a lot of situations and opportunities that we had to go back after the fact and find out about. And so, this isn't, I saw what Rod put out, the video kind of afterwards, and, definitely appreciate changing his tone a little bit after, getting informed about what we're doing. But, this is not an attention grab. This is not a followers thing. I said if we only have 416 followers and it's all the players, that's all we'll ever need because that's the only people we're here to protect and look out for. A players association, we started up as a trade association because that's the only thing we could do to collectively organize. And it was everybody, you know what I mean? It was guys from all the teams. It was guys from the AAF. The unique thing about the situation that we've been in the past 2 years in these spring leagues is that you've seen guys who have played in the league for multiple years, been a part of an NFLPA, been a part of a players union and know what that looks like, and really went into these 2 situations, I won't say naive, but a little bit maybe taken for granted how much that players association really holds weight for the guys. And so situations like the IRS tax situation with the AAF and the bankruptcy situation with the XFL, these are all things that, we're kind of left in the dark because we were never in the room anyway. And so, that has been our main goal, our main focus is just to educate players and try to navigate. We're in the middle of a pandemic and guys don't know what's going to happen next. And the number one priority is to make sure that guys are aware of the situations that might be faced, because right now we're in a time as a country where guys are getting laid off of jobs. There's not all these things. We're talking real life. At the end of the day, this football stuff is secondary to putting food on the table for your families. And so to be going back and forth, are we playing? Are we not playing? We haven't really got the direct answer yet. We were excited to see the commissioner as passionate as he was yesterday and say, come out and play. We have 80 guys from the XFL that are in the CFL now. We've helped those 80 guys out in situations when we didn't have a union. So we've talked to some of these guys in the past year, and there is no ill will towards the CFL or CFLPA or any of that. And I think a lot of stuff was just a little bit misconstrued. There was a bunch of, we're denying their claims. Our claims were never false. Our claims were never that they're not having a season. It was what we've heard because we had guys reaching out to us saying that they did not hear a definitive answer, and they just went through that, in the past year with the CFL not being able to have a season. And if you look at the 3 leagues from the past 2 years, that was probably the worst situation of all when it comes to COVID and all this stuff because they didn't get to play at all. We got 5 games into it, at least got to get a little bit of film, get a little bit of money and things like that. So, I'm excited to just kind of come on and really just expand on some of this stuff that, we've been going through. But that's the basis of it, man. We're a players association that can't unionize right now because we don't have an employer, but we would like to be in position to be able to progress whatever league comes about. And you hear Dwayne Johnson and Danny Garcia speaking about the players and about opportunity for the players and being a players first league. We're 100% on board and excited and behind Dwayne and Danny because we do feel like Dwayne has come from where we come from. And speaking and hearing Danny talk, she's a powerful woman in the industry. And I'm a firm believer that we need more of a balance in the type of industries like that with women being in those positions. So, I think there's a lot of good things to come. And I think right now everybody's a little bit on edge and everybody wants to have an argument. And that's not what we're trying to do. At the end of the day, like I said, if 800 players are all players and those are the only people we have the attention of, that's the only people we need. And players have come to us because we're not getting paid for any of this work that we've done for the past years. We went through IRS 101 and bankruptcy 101, voluntarily, because we've been trying to help all of us out in the situations that we've been faced with for lack of having the union. So that's a little bit of a background on everything.
Yep. No, thank you.
So to that point, I think what needs to be underscored here is that everybody who's been commenting on this week on what seems to be different sides, like let's just say you and Rod are kind of on different sides about certain things. Underlying all of that, both of you, as well as us here on the Markcast, care about the players. That is the underlying thing that we can all agree on. We all care about the players. So how can we improve the communication between someone like yourself and people that are more in tune maybe with the CFL, like a Rod Pedersen or anyone like that?
Right. I think, it was, you look at some of the potentials that'll happen, and we had a little bit of early communication before a lot of the players started signing to the CFL. We had guys reach out to us like, if I sign to the CFL, will I be able to come and maybe possibly join a relaunch of a 2022 league? And that was stuff that they had to be aware of, or their agent had to be aware of going into those contract negotiations, because you have things like team options where if a guy signs a CFL, he might not be able to leave the CFL unless it's going to the NFL. Yeah. All these other leagues, these leagues want to have the talent and all of this stuff to make the league go. And so that was a little bit of a situation where, once again, we were educating players on, if you're going to go there, just make sure that if your intentions are to come back to the States and play in a relaunch of the XFL, make sure that's in your contract, because we know how contracts get. You know what I mean? And I think that's another thing too. And because of all this stuff that we've had to go through, players have really learned a lot these last 2 years on the business side of things and what has to be done to make sure that, the circumstances are what they think they're getting into. And so when you look at the horizon of a potential merger, that means that what is going to happen with the experiences that we've went through as players here in the States in the past 2 spring leagues and the experience that the CFL-PA players have gone through. If there's a merger, there's going to have to be some type of merger of collective union or something to move forward. And so we want nothing more but to have a healthy relationship with the CFL-PA to be able to say, if there is a merger and there's a super league with Canadian teams and USA teams, we would like to all be on the same page and all working forward for the better of the collective. And so I think that's just, like you said, I think all of this is definitely going to result in conversations. We tried to nail down a meeting, like I said, with the CFL-PA. They reached out to us. We had kind of went back and forth a couple of times, just kind of missing each other. And then this happened, and we had received more stuff from them. So I do see a meeting to kind of in the future to kind of clear everything up and get everybody on the same page, because at the end of the day, communication is what's needed, and it needs to be transparent and honest communication about whatever the situation is laid out, because we're in too serious of times to be not letting guys know all the information that could possibly be real.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, what you guys are trying to do is just to let players know that maybe not to have all their eggs kind of in this basket right now. I saw some players even commenting, on all the threads saying that, they had not heard a lot about, when are we reporting the training camp? I mean, we've covered all these leagues for the last, better part of a year now, between the spring league and fan controlled football, and really trying to look out for the players. And so I definitely understand where you guys are coming from, where we did have, food issues and COVID issues in San Antonio with the spring league. I know when fan control football, their championship game will be Saturday, and they were going to have kind of a compensatory game, they called it. And with the other teams that hadn't, that weren't in the championship, and they canceled that this week. And I was very vocal online, making sure that those players would get a chance to be paid even if they weren't going to be playing in that game, because maybe it wasn't necessarily their decision, right? So I do think it is important to have people like you and a union, whatever you want to call it, a collective of individuals, whatever, to advocate for that, because as someone that has covered these leagues for the last year, like, I definitely get where there are things that fall through the cracks. So I do think it's important to have someone like you on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's all we want to do. I think, like I've said multiple times now, the circumstances that everybody is going through, not just us as football players, there's a scarcity right now because of lockdowns, because of travel restrictions, because of all these different type of things. So the last thing we want our guys doing, and let's be clear, this is not a league that revenues billions of dollars. These aren't multi-million-dollar contracts. We were in the XFL with a $27,000 base salary that, because of lack of a union, we couldn't negotiate anything in that. And so to go to that, it's needed. You know what I mean? The communication is needed. All of these things are needed, especially if this spring platform is going to continue to grow. And I've said multiple times, these platforms for players are like gold. There hasn't been a real consistent, not to the level that the AAF, that the XFL was able to accomplish shortly. There hasn't been that type of level of play like that in that time span. So it's something that the players appreciate, but we can't let the opportunity kind of trump us being in the dark or being ignorant to what's going on.
What are your thoughts on this potential merger situation then? That all being said,
of course. We just, I think that's going to be something that waits to get played out. I know one thing that, we've come across is the fact that the Canadian League right now and the Canadian government, it's been said multiple times that they had reached out to try to get loans and they were hurting for money, this and that. And so I think one of the things that's going on right now is there's a betting bill to get passed in Canada, which could increase the revenue if gambling is allowed there. And so, we don't know what that looks like. If they're able to pass that, do they still merger? If they are able to pass that, is that going to bring about a even bigger type of opportunity for a merger because of that? Cross-border and betting and all these things that come on. But, at the end of the day, this is all stuff that, like I said before, we as players need to be aware of all the possibilities, because if the merger is going to be something, then you're going to have having to cross borders to go play and all these type of different things. That's a lot on the player, and their families and all these things. And at the end of the day, that's what we want to be in the know about. I think if it's a merger and it's better for the league and it's better for the game and it's better for the players and it provides more opportunity, we're all for it. We're not trying to shut down anything. We want to be able to shine light on things for the players to be more aware of things. And if it's a bigger league where it contains more people and more exposure, then guys want that. That's what we want as players for everybody. So yeah, I hope, maybe something comes of it. And there is a North American, Canadian, that would be a cool deal. If they can get all the logistics and stuff right with everything going on with COVID, looks like that's going to be a lot to have to plan out, which is probably why a lot of logistics that have to go down, from travel restrictions and all types of stuff, taxes and all these types of things. So, more opportunities. That's what guys want.
Perfect. Just before we let you go, final thoughts. Obviously there's going to be a lot to work through here in the coming months, whatever. If there are players, you want them to reach out to you, right? So you guys can keep everyone in the know. Kind of final takeaways before we let you go with everything going on.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that, the players who are part of this, or the people who are part of this, are players. Like, we've been in these situations. So, we've been hands-on. We've been hands-on with trying to navigate some of the difficulties that we were left with. And so, we bring experience and knowledge to what has gone down here in these last two spring leagues. And we want to help the guys no matter where they're at. Like I said, there's 80 XFL guys in the CFL. And I'm not saying that to say we only want to help the 80 guys in the XFL that were part of the XFL, because they already have a players association. But, we've had guys from there reach out to us and ask us questions. And so and nobody's trying to step on CFLPA toes or anything like that. I know guys personally. We all know each other. We've all played in all over the world. And so at the end of the day, if we can all come together, have healthy communication, and I think it's only going to be better for all of us. And so, that's the only thing that I want to get across from the UFPA is that we're all in the same boat. To be honest, CFL was hit the hardest because they didn't have a season at all. So, it's not, nobody's throwing around any type of agenda or anything like that. This is strictly for the players to get them in the know and make sure that they're aware of all the things that are on the horizon.
Awesome. Kenneth Farrow, we want to thank you for your time joining us here on the XFL Markcast. We'll hopefully have you back on to talk about more of these issues at a later date.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Reid.
We wanted to kind of start with the thing that happened today, the United Football Players Association statement. Where did that? I was so baffled when I saw that. I'm like, this is a kind of semi-existent union that doesn't represent any CFL players. Where do they come off?
Oh, I was hoping you'd tell me, because I'd never heard of these guys before. And if you saw the clip from my show, I was talking to a CFL guy right when this dropped. So I read it to him over the phone, and I'm like, hey, whoever worded it, it sounded very professional, didn't it? Like you could see how people would be fooled by it. But we kind of did a little digging. And listen, I got nothing against Ken Farrow. I was following him before. He was a pro baller. I apparently he played here in Saskatchewan not that long ago. I think he had a cup of coffee. I'm not saying he's not legit. But I talked to a guy with an alumni association. He's like, guys get disgruntled and they go off and splinter their own alumni association or their own players association. This is not sanctioned, guys, by the Canadian Football League. And all the media in Canada was scrambling to get a statement from the CFL to say, is there anything to this? I didn't need to go to the CFL because I knew that this UFPA wasn't even affiliated with the Canadian Football League. And like within an hour, the CFL denounced the statement. So and now, by the way, those guys have come back at me, the UFPA, and they've said, you haven't done your due diligence. You're misrepresenting us. You wait. Hey, you saw that?
I saw what they wrote. Yeah.
Ooh, I know legal speak too. And the point is, they may still cancel this season in the Canadian Football League, but I'm not going to come around and say these guys were right. If they cancel the Canadian Football League season, it'll be a CFL decision, not something from the Players Association. That, don't you guys think when I got players in the CFL DMing me saying, what is this? Wouldn't a union know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we're friends with them. I've reached out, I tweeted at them. I said, we're going to have Rod on today. Our episode, I think we're going to push it Thursday now to kind of get ahead of all this stuff. We certainly have given them, if they want to come on later today when we're done with this or tomorrow, to respond, because it is something that, we've had no XFL stuff for, 18 years, right? And then last week goes crazy. And then this week now, this morning with all this stuff, I mean, it's just been so overwhelming trying to keep up with it. So yeah, no, we know them. They follow us. We've talked about them on the show back when they formed. It's a lot of former XFL guys. And at the core of it, I do think what they're trying to look out for is when we have like Fan Control Football here in the States. That's this new kind of like offshoot Twitch thing. XFL, we had the Spring League this year where they flew all these guys down to San Antonio, and then like they weren't feeding them properly. There was COVID outbreaks. They had to shut the whole season down. So at a core, what they're trying to do is good, right? Where they're trying to band together a lot of these players from not the NFL. So just to give some context for that, we have gone back. So I'm not saying that they're like the be all end all one way or another, but I do get what they're trying to do somewhat.
But
they're trying to, yeah, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Sorry, at that point, they don't represent any CFL players. The CFL players are represented by the CFLPA. And so why is a union that isn't representing any CFL players commenting at all?
I know what they're trying to protect the players. I love the players. I'm on the players' side. I'm all for all of that. And believe me, I've had buddies that have played in the Spring League, and I'm following the Fan Control Football League very closely. I'm entertained by ball. I'm on the players' side. But in that clip today, and I talked about it today, just don't represent the CFL because you don't. That's all. And by the way, I think the big crux with me was the way it was worded. It said they cited sources, coaches and players in the CFL that the next 2 seasons were going to be canceled. You can't send out a news release citing rumors. You can't do that. If you send out a news release, say it's canceled, period. So I just think I just don't think they know what they're doing.
That seems like something in the front office of the CFL, like in the commissioner's office. If they had sources within the commissioner's office that said this, there might be more weight to it. But you're talking to maybe one player, one coach they're giving opinions maybe, and then all of a sudden they run with it and say, "Oh, it's confirmed. They're going to do this." It seems weird.
We're getting just a little. Your mic's rubbing on your jacket just a little bit from your headphones. Just to that up near the call. Yeah. So just in general, we've really been sprung on all this CFL stuff. I mean, the last week, obviously, we were going to start covering everything anyway, needing kind of some football content here, alternative football content. Did all this come out of nowhere to you too? All these talks and everything between the XFL and the CFL?
Okay, it did. But I told you guys before we went to air, and I'll say it here. When the XFL was first formed in 2001, I had a lot of friends playing the league. CFL guys have played in both seasons. And I thought, you know what? We were living hand to mouth as a CFL back then. I'm like, Vince McMahon's got more money than God. Why would we not bring the 2 leagues together? That was 20 years ago. Prior, I faced the firing squad for saying that from CFL fans. And that was before Twitter and Facebook. See, the backlash was immense. So the notion of having a merger or a collaboration was never new to me. But when it came out that they were actually talking, I was absolutely stunned. But the more that we've had CFL media, people on my show in the last week, they all realized the CFL wouldn't be doing this if they weren't at death's door financially. And I don't know where you guys fall on this, but what the people, I'm for it. I'm for whatever will work for both leagues. CFL's got a 100-year brand. Pretty good football, despite what Pat McAfee says, calls it state fair football, but whatever. It's got the brand. One thing the CFL's always done right is football. They haven't done business right. They haven't done marketing right. It's a shrinking business. Attendance is going down. Ratings are going down. The XFL doesn't have a 100-year brand. They have a year and 5-week brand, but they do business well. They do marketing off the charts. They've got the TV contracts on national news or on national networks. So if you bring the 2 together, it seems like a perfect marriage. That's why I'm supporting it.
Especially when you think if you're trying to grow the game of the CFL, you have to think outside the border. You have to think, well, how can we get our Canadian Football League teams into U.S. markets and maybe get some exposure in those markets and grow? That's why I'm in favor of it too. Expanding that footprint for Canadian football teams.
But this is why I think this is new, and why I think if they've been talking prior to last week, I don't think it's been for very long, because our commissioner of the Canadian Football League, Randy Ambrosie, is a former player. And for the last 18 months, he's been pushing what he called CFL 2.0 global initiative. Have you been following this at all? We've had,
I've read a little bit. Yeah, this coming up.
Yeah. So we've had a global draft, and the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who are down the street from me, the stadium's 5 minutes from where I am right now, had a Mexican player on their roster and a German player last year. Well, they couldn't play. They couldn't get on the field. They weren't at the level of a CFL player. Listen, our caliber of play is tremendous. Our caliber of athlete is tremendous. But those European and Mexican players, they simply weren't. And so what Randy Ambrosie said to me is, well, look at the NBA. When they brought over Yao Ming, it started the international influx, and look where it is now. And look at the NHL and the 80s invasion, if you guys are hockey fans, of the Russians and the Swedes and the Czechs. I'm like, Randy, Yao Ming was an all-star his first year. Sergei Makarov was the rookie of the year in the NHL in 1988. They came in right at par. So your global initiative, I love our commissioner. He's a great dude. These guys can't play. And our fans sniffed it out immediately. They know. So he wanted to expand past our borders, but he wasn't looking at America. He was looking at Europe, and he was looking at Mexico. So there's that. And the other thing is, we have the all-time winningest coach in the Canadian Football League, a guy by the name of Wally Buono. I'm not sure if you guys ever heard of him, but he racked his wins up with the BC Lions and the Calgary Stampeders. He's an absolute icon. in the CFL. He's Bill Belichick without the cheating, and he's a good guy. And a year ago, he said on my, you know what, he's Don Shula of Canada, okay? And he said the CFL's getting stale. And nobody said a word. I say on my show the CFL's getting stale. And again, everybody wants to disbar me and lambaste me and stuff. I'm like, well, he said the same thing. We're getting stale. So the XFL is exciting. I watched all the games last year. Mark Trestman's a really good friend of mine. Jamie Elizondo's become a friend of mine. I just think the synergies are all there. So anyway, we need to grow because we're dying. But you saw the backlash from our fans. My God. Like, they're saying they're going to burn their tickets, never go to a game. I don't believe that. But you're seeing the passion of CFL fans. They've long been passionate.
But see, that's what I don't get is, and we said when we did our big episode last week, we're the XFL Markcast, but we're not trying to be marks for like, okay, the XFL has been, is nearly as important as the CFL or all this kind of stuff, right? But why is it where the NFL has commanded the most money it ever has this year? We talked about all the TV ratings and deals, a week or two ago, 100% TV now rights fees, year over year to this year compared to last year. And then, where the CFL is clinging to survive. What is it about like that game? Or is it, I've seen all the excuses this week, CFL's got less, there's less teams. Canada has less population. I mean, why is it that the CFL here is breathing, hardly breathing the life, but yet NFL is as popular as it's ever been?
Well, just allow me, just a small history lesson.
Yep.
Americans came to the CFL in the 60s and 70s because the CFL paid more. Some of our icons, again, they won't mean anything to you, their names, but George Reid retired as the all-time rushing leader. All-time sack leader Ron Estee came to the CFL because it was paying more than the NFL. And around 1980, the NFL just took off like a rocket. And I assume it was because of television revenue. I'm sure that's what it was. And the marketing machine that is the NFL. The salaries in the CFL haven't really changed for 40 years. Starting rookie salary right now for an American or a Canadian too is like $62,000 American. The salaries never went up. So I can tell you whose salaries have gone up exponentially: presidents, CEOs, general managers, head coaches. So what the critics of the CFL are saying, it's a top-heavy league. We've got, the last season they played a couple of quarterbacks making $750,000 a year. Nothing wrong with that. That's more than some guys in the NFL. But that's like, I can count them on one hand. Everybody else is making nothing. So the people that have been running the CFL for 50 years have been football guys. And that's why I say they've got football right. The game's great. The talent's great. But they have not been real good business guys. And over the last decade or so, the shifts have been for business people to run the teams. And they've run it somewhat into the ground to where we are right now. And the other thing is that a CFO of a team told me probably 4 years ago, he said the number one issue we're facing in the CFL right now is ticket sales. It's been declining rapidly. That's where their revenue is. So that kind of gives you, they did not keep up business wise. Their marketing has not been good. And it's come back to bite them. The pandemic just exposed all this.
How much do the teams get paid out from the TSN contract? Do you know offhand?
Yeah. Every team, rough figures, every team's salary cap is 6.25. That's their payroll, 6.25 million. And the I know. Is that a lot or not a lot?
Not a lot.
Yeah. That's dirt cheap.
Yeah.
Right. So TSN's contract covers every team's payroll.
For context, for the salary cap this year for NFL is 182.5 per team.
Right. So JJ Watt just signed for what, 3 times what a CFL team makes.
32 million for 2 years he's on.
So you're saying and there's no money left over from that? Is it just that's all they pay is just the salaries?
That's what they pay the teams. And then that covers the payroll. So from a business perspective, I was on the radio in Ottawa a couple of weeks ago, and it was a hockey guy interviewing me, but he said, if all the payroll's paid and the number one cost in the CFL is labor, why aren't we playing? Why can't they make any money? I said, because they spend too much on office salaries and they just spend on things that don't matter. So I'm just telling you, the TV deal pays for the players, period. I think that's pretty good.
I guess I'm I'm trying to do the math and wonder if there's any more left over from what TSN pays. Because if TSN just pays the salaries for the players and that's all they pay, you're talking $60 million. That's all they pay for the rights for the TV.
Yeah, it's actually, I think, a little less. But the Saskatchewan Roughriders, which they're like the Dallas Cowboys of the CFL. Their last season they played, they made $19 million in ticket sales alone. $19 million in the year. That's leftover money. So a lot of people are going, where'd that money go? Like, it's been bled out through the pandemic because the league hasn't played in a year and 15 months. So they've been paying their coaches, paying their staff. Like in the pandemic, here's another problem with the CFL. The only people weren't being paid were the players. How do you think that went over? And listen, the coaches are my buddies. The staff, all those people, I worked in the league for 20 years. They're my friends. But they were being paid. The players weren't. Until they made a huge stink over it. So the players were at the bottom of the totem pole in the CFL, whereas in the NFL, it's like this, right? So they've just done a lot of things backwards. And to get to this XFL-CFL collaboration talk, guys, the commissioner is pretty steadfast in saying, we're just talking. We're just talking. We're not talking about a merger. The message that's been sent to me to share to the viewers, I don't necessarily believe it, but they're saying, we just want to tap into the Rock's contacts, his brand, his marketing abilities, but we don't want anything to change with the CFL. We don't want to merge. We want to keep our 9 teams, maybe grow to a 10th in Canada. We want to stay with 3 downs in the larger field and all of that. And I'm like, guys, you think that you're going to use The Rock because he's CFL alum out of the goodness of his heart? I literally said to the guy that told me this, what's The Rock get out of this?
Yeah.
He goes, well, he's just going to do it for free.
No.
Well, they believe that.
Well, it's interesting. So I was just on, so our podcast is part of XFL News Hub, and they're kind of like I would say the premier XFL kind of news site here. And so we were just on a roundtable last night. So this would be Monday when this is airing, all the writers, everybody trying to fantasize all these different things. Is it, do we do a CFL season and an XFL season? Are we merging the teams? Are we bringing them in? What do you see coming from all this?
If we just back up for a second, before the XFL came on the table, I was fully thinking one of 2 things was going to happen. MLSE was just going to buy the CFL like The Rock bought the XFL. MLSE is Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. That's the corporation in Toronto that owns the Maple Leafs, the Raptors, the Toronto Argonauts, Toronto FC Soccer, plus the facilities they play in. Big company. That went off the table because they looked at their own bank account and said, we're hemorrhaging in the pandemic. They don't have money to buy the CFL. Next, I thought it would be NFL Europe, which was a spring league. And I had coaches calling me who had worked in NFL Europe and NFL, and they're like, hey, Rod, how would that work? I said, play in the spring, just like the NFL Europe. They just slapped Canada on it instead of Europe. Well, our commissioner went to Roger Goodell. Sounds like they had a few talks, and Goodell said, we're not interested. We encourage you to be your own self-sustaining league, which they haven't been able to do. So now enter the XFL, right? So here's my take on this, is it becomes a spring-summer league. We've been a summer-fall league. I mean, you guys are football fans. You know when we play. Kick off basically June 1st and go to December 1st. And it's worked okay. But I think that it's March here, and although we have brutal winters, it's melting. It's above 35 Fahrenheit, right? We could open training camp in March, kick off April 1st, and go to the end of September and get our 6-month season in, amalgamated with the XFL. So you guys start right after Super Bowl. Well, we're just backing it up a month.
And then you wouldn't have to compete necessarily with the NFL, because I don't know, like, do more people watch the NFL in Canada than they watch the CFL?
See, this is another problem. Yeah, we got all the great questions. This is another problem that I have. Obviously, when I called games for 20 years, I was close with the TV guys. I was doing radio. And I said to them, guys, you better start pumping your broadcast more and marketing a little better, because the NFL is gaining on you. And the broadcaster for TSN, our ESPN, goes, no, they'll never beat it. They'll never beat us. Canada loves the CFL. That was probably 10 years ago. I would say CFL ratings were here. NFL was here. It's gone like that. They caught them and passed them. So we do compete with the National Football League, to the point that in the last 2 years, we've moved all our fall games off Sundays because we were getting murdered by the NFL, and moved them to Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Thursday night football became a thing in the CFL. So my point to you is 15 years ago, didn't compare with the NFL. Now they're losing to the NFL. And NFL Canada is an incorporated arm of the NFL. They do not get along with not only the CFL, but Football Canada, which is our sanctioned governing body for university football, junior football, high school football.
We're getting a
NFL
little.
Canada.
We're getting a little.
Hey?
Sorry, with your mics a little.
Sorry about that. Anyways, NFL Canada has come in and just eaten their lunch. And then it doesn't help that Chase Claypool is Canadian. And there's more Canadians than ever going straight to the NFL. And they're making so much money that they retire when they're done. There was a time for decades that Canadians would go to the NFL and then come back to the CFL and play in their hometown team because it's a great story and playing for their family and friends. They don't need to do that anymore because, as you guys know, football's a brutal sport. Working out isn't fun unless you're a freak and you're addicted to it. So we're like the NFL's just come in and just mowed the CFL, just taken their lunch money, and CFL's done nothing about it.
Do kids grow up in Canada now and play in high school and college wanting to play in the CFL or wanting to go to the NFL? Here where I am, which is the heartbeat of the Canadian Football League, they dream of playing for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I mean, we just built a brand new stadium, played in it 2 seasons, maybe 3. Same designer as AT&T Stadium in Dallas. It's a mecca, right? So they do here. But I'll give you an example of a guy by the name of Chris Schultz. He just passed away last week at the age of 61. He grew up 15 miles south of Toronto. And his story was he grew up dreaming of playing for the Dallas Cowboys. Was drafted by them out of Arizona, played for their Cowboys for 4 years, came back to the CFL, played with the Argos, won the Grey Cup with the John Candy, Wayne Gretzky owned Toronto Argonauts, then did 20 years on the TSN panel as an analyst. Southern Ontarians, people in Southern Ontario that grow up, they dream of the NFL. And it doesn't help that Toronto's been trying to get an NFL team for 25 years. It's just brainwashed the people of Toronto, which incidentally is like 5.5 million people, that the NFL's better. Like they draw crowds routinely in Toronto of 11, 12,000 fans for the Argos. And it's a crime where they used to get 55,000. Another instance of just getting, again, murdered by the NFL in our own market. Your mic's still rubbing. Sorry.
I don't know what to do. I'll tuck this in here.
Yeah, sorry. So when you talk about running here, running a little bit later, River, I mean, do you see it all as one league, as 2 competing divisions? I mean, you see as one league of I think you would call it the Continental Football League, right? Just that's what takes over all of North America.
Well, I would like to see you guys go to 10 teams in America, or maybe 8 existing and 1 in Mexico City and 1 in Cancun or something. Because Mexico is just an untapped football market, right? So 3 countries, but 20 teams. And the problem that we haven't even brought up in this interview yet is a little thing called the ratio in the CFL. Yeah. Have you heard about it? Yeah. It's a mandated CFL bylaw that 40% of teams need to be Canadian. So if we could merge tomorrow, frankly, if it wasn't for the ratio. But in the 90s, when there were 8 U.S. teams in the CFL, American government would not recognize the ratio. They said it violated antitrust laws, competition laws, which it does. So those teams played with 100% Americans, while the Canadian teams played with 60% Americans. You didn't really notice the difference on the field. But we're not going to merge, to answer your question, with the ratio still in place. And that is a huge hill. That is a hill a lot of Canadian football people will die on. They don't want, you know why? Because of your population size versus ours and how many American football players are available versus Canadian players. That's kind of what we're talking about right now. I think most people would be in favor of a merger. They really would. But if it means getting rid of the ratio, it would be the death of Canadian football. And frankly, nobody wants that.
Do you think it would be the death of Canadian football?
It would be the death of Canadian 3-down football. Yeah, right. Because I'm all for. And 20 years ago, I was throwing the entire Canadian game out the window and going to American rules if that's what was going to save it. I mean, in the province of BC and Ontario, they actually play 4-down American rules football now. It's just guys haven't really got my face about it, but I know they're mad when I say, let's not hide behind the ratio. My dream, Reid, or my vision is an American Hockey League model. Are you guys hockey fans at all?
Yeah. I'm a Devils fan.
Yes. Well, there's never been an American ratio in the American Hockey League.
No.
You know, for 100 years, there were way more hockey players in Canada than the U.S., and there was never a ratio mandating a minimum amount of Americans on the team. It's just not the way Americans think. But the way the CFL does it, that's just so Canadian. And that's just what needs to change. And so my idea, just to go one step further on the full merger, is to take all the players and put them in one talent pool, American, Canadian, and global, have the scouts rank them 1 to 500 and have a draft. And we'll find out who goes where as to where the priority players are.
Because it's so interesting to me, and since we started posting this stuff and getting the discussion, it seems like a lot of CFL fans are like, if it can't be the 3 downs, the ratio, all these things, then we don't want them. We don't want the XFL. We don't want all this stuff. And my question is, and again, we're not the XFL marks, whatever, but you got to look at, where the money's coming from. And if the CFL, where they've turned down all these things, I know that even Brian Woods, who is the CEO of the Spring League, I think he had even reached out to the CFL earlier this year, last year about, buy into that, all these different things. And it's like, at some point you have to take the lifeline, or you're not going to there's not going to be a boat, right, to get into. I mean, is that am I wrong in thinking that?
You can't.
No, but you
bite your face. You can't do that.
No, but they've been doing it for 100 years. And you have to understand something, gentlemen. This is a key part of the interview. These CFL owners, I know them very well. They're not bad people, but they are holding on to the current CFL business model like grim death. You know why? Because they know if we merge with the XFL, they're gone. And a buddy of mine, they'll be out. And a buddy of mine with the BC Lions, I won't say who he was, he just goes, these guys all like to play Jerry Jones. They like to watch their team in their luxury suite, eat shrimp cocktail, and have everybody kiss their ass because they're the owner. That's why they're hanging on like grim death to the current CFL model. And they also believe, as hard as it is for you guys to believe, that they can, again, pick the Rock's pocket and give them nothing back. Because they're used to doing that. The concept of a partnership is different than the concept of a sponsorship. It's like, give us your $1 million and see you later. And you're lucky to be involved with the CFL. That's what's put them in this bind right now.
So I guess then that brings up like I'm trying to draw this here where if they, I guess I'm starting to see why they would even entertain a phone call, as if they are under the naive belief that they can just use the Rock's marketing arm for free. And they've
said that to me.
And now like we've speculated, of course, we were sitting there going, why would the CFL even entertain a phone call from the Rock if they weren't looking to get A, financial help, or B, merge? And now you're proposing a C. They're just looking to use the marketing arm and give nothing back. That's fascinating.
But that's
your mind's going to be spinning tonight trying to get your head around it, but it doesn't surprise me because I know these guys. Go ahead, Reid.
Oh, no,
sorry.
No. So but that's what they're thinking, right? But what do you think is going to happen? I mean, if that's why they answer the phone, right? But if there really is, you've said on your show, CFL's out of money, right? Or they're close to being that. So if that's what they think, but this is what the reality is, what's the next steps? Where do we go?
The next steps are, if the Rock refuses to inject capital into the CFL for this season, they're done. There will be the CFL will fold. They need money from somewhere.
Yeah, this year right now.
They won't play. They will fold. And then the Rock will be able to waltz in and literally buy this league for nothing. And then from there, they rebuild. And that's that 20 team vision that I said to you. And the Rock would be familiar with the ratio from his time in the CFL. My thing is, while I think we should get rid of it, I'm willing to listen to suggestions as to how we can work around it. But I'm not a football guy enough to say how they would do that, or even if Americans would accept it. So they've been turned down by the federal government of Canada for funding.
Mm-hmm.
They've been turned down by that. They've been turned down by the NFL for funding. They've been turned down by the MLSE for funding. See, they're going everywhere with their hand out. And I know for a fact they've been begging their sponsors here, this football team here, for millions of dollars just to cover their payroll. We're seeing last stages, gentlemen, of the Canadian Football League. So where I see it going is them not having a season this year, folding, and then the XFL walks in and takes it over. That's what I think is going to happen. The CFL would be adamantly against that, obviously, but I don't see any other way.
Wow.
That's the soundbite. That's the soundbite I'm going to use here to tease this.
It's a very scary thought because, like you said, it's a 100-year brand. You would like to think that they'd be willing to change with the times, but it seems like they're playing by the rules from 50 years ago.
They've never changed with the times. And the other thing is there's a motion been passed in the Canadian government here, a bill within the last couple of months for single game betting that we haven't had allowed in Canada. And the CFL's just like dollar signs going off in their eyes going, oh, we can get in on betting. I'm like, guys, you can't get the betting money until you play games. And you can't play games until you have money. And they don't have money. So they're sitting there. What I'm talking about is money to stage a season. Fly your players in. Pay them. Like, they don't have that money right now. I'm just sitting here waiting to hear some cash injection from somewhere to get this season going. It's not happening. And we are, what are we, middle of March? Training camp would start May 1st. Yeah. We're 6 weeks away. Guys, there was an owner from the Ottawa Red Blacks team in the Ottawa Sun this week said, we're 90% sure we're going to play. 90% sure. But that's going to go right up and maybe until the day before training camp. And I'm like, you can't give yourself wiggle room like that. You can't.
100%. It's got to be 100%.
But here's why they can't do that. We haven't even got into the the vaccination thing.
Oh, that's true.
They have said the only way that they will be able to play is if they get fans in the stands. They won't do a bubble concept like fan-controlled spring league, but they weren't paying their players. No. I mean, a CFL, maybe $6.25 million per team isn't NFL, but it's a lot more than the spring league. Yeah. You know what I mean? So the point is they got to get fans in the stadiums. And while the vaccinations are going okay in Canada, nowhere near what you guys got going. It's rolling in America, it looks like. I saw Dr. Fauci on ESPN last week saying we will not have full capacity stadiums in America this summer. Forget about it. So there's that whole thing about maybe we do throw the doors open to 50% capacity. That's still not enough to pay the payroll. And even if we did, we still have to convince people to buy tickets and come. Right? That's the second hurdle here.
Yep. And just to reiterate, so because we had talked, I just want to make sure I got all the numbers right. So the TSN is covering the payroll, right? And then this lack of money is just because they haven't played now in 2 years, and because of the lack of fans, and because of the lack of tickets, and because we covered it all last year. Not getting the loan and all that, and the bankruptcy, or not the bankruptcy, but the shuttering kind of last year of all that. So that's where we've kind of all led to this place.
Well, there's been zero sponsorship revenue because I know for a fact there are corporations that sponsor the Rough Riders here to the tune of into the millions. Or like the radio deal where that I was under for 20 years is $500,000 a year radio rights. All their revenue is predicated on playing on games. So sideline ads, ticket revenue, luxury suites, broadcast rights. Why are you sponsoring a football team if there are no games? I'm not saying you shouldn't. What's in it for a corporation? So that's why they can't get their revenue going, because they've got nothing to deliver.
Got it.
See, it's a real chicken. They need to play to get the revenue, but they need revenue to play.
I get what you're saying. It's a paradox. It's kind of like a choke point situation that, and I don't want to focus too much on wrestling, but Paul Heyman explained this with ECW. Said there's many choke points when it comes to if you have a product, if you have a way to distribute the product, so on and so forth. If one of these things falters, then everything falters. And it seems like that's, like everything is symbiotic. Everything is a paradox, chicken and the egg. But if one of those things falters, the whole thing falters. You can't have two of the three. You've got to have all three. Makes sense.
And I'd like to think that I'm completely out to lunch on all of this, but everything points to what I'm saying. They haven't been able to declare a season because they don't know if they're going to play. Because the player, this was hilarious. If you probably followed this, when the announcement came out last week of the collaboration talks, current players were saying, yeah, but when's training camp? Do I need to ask The Rock? Forget about collaborating with the XFL. Can you give us some concrete details about this year? And the only reason the owners haven't been able to give him an answer is because they don't know. It's predicated on getting butts in seats. And we don't know when everybody's going to have enough vaccinations across this country to get in. And even when they do, are they going to buy tickets? So listen, it's really pointing to them not playing this season, which goes to the league folding, unfortunately, and the XFL riding to the rescue, the Rock buying it for a song. And I'll say it again, with him being cut by Calgary, by the way, if you've seen all those interviews with him, it seems like it burns in him. They left him destitute with $7 in his pocket. I'm like, you guys really think that he feels that he owes the CFL anything? He has said being cut by the CFL was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. What is in it for him to come back and save you, given what you did in 1995 to him? I haven't got the answer to that.
Well, Rod, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. You gave us plenty of time, and we are so grateful you came on and chatted about all this stuff. And wow, just really opened up our eyes to a lot of things that were going on. And this is going to take some time to process.
I know. Well, thanks, gents. But you know what? When we do play the Continental Football League, you'll be coming on my show. We'll be analyzing the games. And what's gone on between your followers and my followers is a perfect example of what could happen in the league itself is growth. Right? Opening our doors to America is the greatest thing ever. I'm not welded to the Canadian game, but you know what? I don't speak for everybody, and it's been fun to talk about. So we'll see. We'll see what happens as it goes. But I appreciate the opportunity.
We really appreciate it. It means a lot for you to come on.
Yes. Thanks, guys.
My head is spinning right now because the way I'm understanding this is that their TV deal with TSN pays about $58 million a year. $58 million a year to televise a football product. What? You pay $58 million a year only to televise what?
Yeah, it was interesting. We're gonna do some more research with the numbers and stuff. I mean, it doesn't sound off. I mean, I know Rod, has covered this forever, and it seems frightening to me. But you look at NFL is king, and I mean, even look at the spring league and stuff, trying to struggle to get on. We're on FS2, all this stuff. I mean, it's a weird situation.
What was the XFL's TV deal? Do you remember offhand? You should know this.
They got production cost covered, and then the XFL split the ad revenue with them. XFL wasn't paid anything for that.
I mean, that's fine, but it's like if you're only making $58 million, that's close to nothing for a league that's been in existence longer. Well, not longer, but 100 years. Yeah. 100 years. And you're still only making $58 million on your TV deal?
Yeah.
You're making a tenth of what you should be making.
When you look at the money that the NFL's drawn in, I mean, it's crazy. We're talking. I mean, we covered the ESPN and all that, a week or two ago, and what did we say? $8.6 billion between the four networks covering to do the NFL, right? And obviously, and people are saying, obviously, NFL's got more teams and more. Right. I mean, all that stuff. But we're saying, we did the math. It was like 8.2 billion to 58 million for 9 teams.
58 million. They could charge 580 million. How much is TSN? Like he talks about all these people that buy that are like staunch Canadian football, blah blah blah. Like they're sticking to their guns. They love the Canadian football game. Whatever. That means there's viewership there. That means there's ratings there. That means TSN is literally bending the CFL over and taking advantage of them.
Well, but also, I mean, and I've seen people argue all week, Canada's got a 9th of the population. I mean, there's a lot of things to go into. I mean, I get both sides. And that's what we're just trying to cover on here, because I get a lot of, American and XFL and NFL fans on here. And then we've had a lot of CFL people coming, right? And so for every pro, there's another pro on the other side. I mean, I've gotten all these messages all week, but yeah, I mean, their argument would be, less teams, less people, less population.
58 million is still criminal to me, though. I'm sorry. That's still too low. That's still too low. If that is in fact the case, that TSN pays $58 million a year to televise a football league and probably makes 20 times that on ad revenue, that's insane to me.
Well, we'll do some more research. I mean, we appreciate Rod coming on, obviously, and sharing that. And I don't want to get hung up on the 58 million. I want to get where it's covering the when we get into numbers and stuff like that, sometimes they're like, well, actually, it's 62 million. Okay, I mean, roughly 60 million.
Semantics argument. That's a semantics argument.
Anyway, I like to cover our bases here on the show. So we appreciate Rod coming on, and I really, it means a lot for him to take that much of his time to come on, and I know that our listeners and his listeners are really going to appreciate that. So lots of good insights there from a CFL, analyst, sports person. So. Well, so obviously, fiery Rod interview, that was good. Really thankful too for Kenneth coming on and kind of sharing, his side. I know that they're trying to just get the word out there, and I do think that it got a little firestormy with just CFL fans and players and everything. So I really appreciate everyone coming on. We have I've really spent a lot of time this week getting all sorts of different interview tidbits, articles from, lots of different people, obviously lots of different thoughts about the XFL-CFL stuff. So we have Pat McAfee. He came on and he wanted to thank former Saskatoon player Dwayne Johnson for saving the CFL. He says, keeping jobs alive, keeping leagues alive, keeping hopes alive. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you for what you're doing. And thank you to Danny Garcia. As a kicker, Ernesto, are you a Pat McAfee fan?
I enjoy watching his shows. And it's interesting because, I respect him as a punter. I never kicked with him before, but I think it's amazing that he was a kicker that transitioned into a punter, an exceptional punter over the years. His shows are funny. They're informative. And there's some questionable times where I've seen where he tries to push certain guys in our profession where I'm like, we kind of know that guy. So it's interesting, but I mean, I love watching his show. I think I subscribe to his show every single day. And there's always something interesting. I should say that much. And the guys he has around there, it's fun. It's just a little bit.
Well, also, obviously, just focusing on the jobs and stuff as well. I mean, I know we talked about at the beginning of the show, but like more than anything, it's not even a football thing. It's a job and it's an employment thing. I mean, do you look at it that way where it is so weird to think of that something that people watch for sport, you're doing as a profession. I mean, how do you put those two things together?
It's tough. It's tough because when you're coming out of college, you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to be a professional. I'm going to do this full time. And as you get older, you're like, okay, this is a job. And then you got to also balance out other things too. So, I don't even watch football after I play in the season. It's brutal because we get so much football during the season and you're so mentally engulfed in your profession that after the season, I'm a big 49ers fan. I grew up a 49ers fan, but I can't even tell you how many games I even watched. Probably not watched one game this year. People ask me all the time, you're a football guy. Yeah, but I live this every single day. And mentally, I need to take a break from it. So it's always difficult, but I think it's different. Like I got friends all the time. Hey, what'd you think of this game? Or they have their fantasies. They're like, hey, well, I got this kicker or I got that. And I'm like, yeah, they're good. I don't know. I'm worried about my own thing. So
is Jimmy G going to be back this year?
God, I hope not. I hope not. I think all 49er fans are done. You can't trust a good-looking guy, and you can't even stay healthy. So I'd rather go with somebody else.
One note here I had that was so funny is the funniest thing about all this with the CFL and XFL stuff is the whole original XFL back in 2001. The word on the street is Vince tried to buy the CFL and they turned him down. And so he said, screw you guys, I'm going to start my own XFL. So it is really funny to kind of, and obviously with The Rock and Saskatoon and all that and come full circle. But I mean, this really all came about because Vince got turned down back in, 99 or 2000. I guess I have notes here, 99. I mean, did you follow the XFL like 1.0 back in 2000?
I was in eighth grade when the first XFL came about. And I remember watching the Demons and I believe it was also the Outlaws in Las Vegas. I remember.
Yep.
And I remember watching that. And the reason why I was watching that, I was following it because at the time I was discovering football and accidentally got into the sport, fell in love with it. But I had no one at the time to really relate to. And at the time, I think it was for the Las Vegas Outlaws or the Los Angeles Extreme, one of the two. Uh-huh. There was a kicker by the name of Jose Cortez. He was the first Salvadorian. And I was like, that's interesting. I didn't think Salvadorians played football because we're so short. Anyways, and he was an exceptional kicker and made it in the XFL. I think he was the best kicker of the XFL that year. But I followed it. I think it was more interesting to see the kickoff because it was like a coin toss and they just ran for the ball. And,
yeah.
Oh, that was brutal. So, but yeah, I did follow it. It was fun back then. It got a little bit weirder as the season went on. It became more wrestling type of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I got it's been very the big thing on the show a couple weeks ago is I bought a He Hate Me jersey, like an old tags on, original stock. And then obviously all the CFL stuff's gone up. So I'm still I'll bust out the Rod Smart. I reached out to Rod. I tried to get Rod on the podcast because I thought that would be a great, when all the trademark stuff was going on with the He Hate Me. We got June Jones was making the rounds again this week. It seems like he's really trying to keep his name out there. Did you have any interactions with him, with any of when the Dragons played the Roughnecks?
No. I remember seeing him during the commercial when I'm waiting to kick off. I did not have any interactions. It was a great game. It was a game that I thought we were going to be able to pull off. Very controversial ending to that game.
Yeah.
But I got a chance to see him. I think it's always been an honor to be on the same playing field with some exceptional individuals that I've known over the years growing up, including playing for Jim Zorn, but also seeing Jim Jones and everything. So it's always fun to play against these individuals. Unfortunately, in my profession as a kicker, it's better not to be in the spotlight and talking with these guys. We just want to do our job and get away from there and everything. But no, I never got a chance to talk to him, but highly respect him as a coach. And who knows, maybe in the future I can talk to him.
Yeah, that was a great game. That was, BJ got to play. He got the start. We had the big 3 seconds left. Everyone knows 3 seconds left on the clock. BJ didn't know. But yeah, June was making the rounds. He thinks it's going to be 4-down football. He thinks the Rock's going to pull off a merger. Do you have a strong take? Do you want to see the leagues combined? Do you want to see an AFL or AFC, NFC kind of thing? I mean, what would you want to see in an ideal, just as a fan and as a player?
I think what I would like to see is a platform and another, avenue for players like myself who went to small schools, who didn't make it to the NFL, who are still striving to do it, but another place to play and not to be able to challenge the NFL. Because I think that's the downfall for many leagues, that once they try to challenge the NFL, it's downhill from there. So if they can become their own entity, I think it'd be great. The merger would be interesting. I think it'd be great to have Canadian teams, United States teams, and be playing each other. Now, when it comes to the rules, that's going to be interesting because I was never a fan of the 3-down rule. I think 4 downs would be great. I think our kickoff would be, it's been exciting, and I think it'd be great. For me, seeing in arena football, I always saw the motion man, the receiver. I think it'd be great to have one motion man. I think that'd be more exciting to do. So little things that maybe they come together. I would not like to see the goalpost in front of the end zone. That'd be weird. But, it's interesting to see that. I think it'd be great if they can come together and really make it work and not push things back. But also to give another platform for players is great. And people love football all year round.
It is really hard because I know with the original XFL, and I know, Sam Schwartzstein and all the work that all the guys put in, and girls, to figuring out the rules and what can we tweak and what's it not going to break. We've covered, and we are still covering fan control football. We'll talk about that, where they're still figuring out the rules kind of as they go. I mean, we're changing, they just announced this week, and we'll get into fan control later, but the games are going to be 2 30-minute halves this week, as opposed to 2 20-minute halves. Well, that's, It's a big deal. And when you're talking about stats and plays and stuff. So, I mean, I've seen more fantasy bookings of potential CFL, XFL merger rule things in the last week than I would ever know would exist before. Wow. If you, if you take this width of the field, but the CFL length of the field and leave the goalpost, but then do all that. I mean, there's such different games. I have not watched enough CFL football. We have people that have been educating me, and we're going to continue to have them on the podcast. I mean, is it where you play, like, you're doing the XFL, you're doing the indoor football? Is it all these rules and stuff? I mean, how hard is it to meld those together as a player? I don't know.
It's not so much from a kicker's perspective. I mean, the biggest transition I had to make in the XFL is I remember when we scored our first touchdown in Washington, I was trotting out there for an extra point.
Yeah.
And I remember one of our coaches like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I'm like, "We just scored a touchdown, coach. I saw Coach Zorn do this, which means 1 point."
Yeah.
And I think Coach Zorn was a lot confused on that one too.
Yeah.
So someone had to tell me, no. So, I mean, I was on the 20-yard line of the opposite side, and it was a long way back walking to the opposite side. And I remember the referee's like, "Look, we're learning as we go, so this is strange." So, I mean, just like little rules here and there, but from a kicker perspective, it's just once we know the rules, we adjust during the offseason and make these adjustments. I mean, in the CFL, the kicking is almost the same, with the exception of the goalpost being in front. But for punters, it's a big difference up there because they have, where they're taught here to have a hang time. Where in the CFL, there's a halo rule, and it's to protect the returner. So, it's not so much the hang time, to get the ball to as quickly as possible. Same thing in the XFL. That was the thing we had to figure out, was not so much hang time. We had to get to the ball to the returner quickly so that everyone can move.
Yep.
But we're still figuring it out. And I'm like, oh, okay, so eliminate the 4-second hang time, just get it down there as quickly as you can. So little things here and there, but from a player, it's just, as long as we know the rules, it's our job as professionals to work within those rules and make it work.
We have a couple other statements here to go through. So Football Canada president, I guess it's an actual title up there. I was trying to do some research on this. Jim Mullen, he's very, a lot of the CFL people really want to stand proud and if XFL wants to come in, they can play our game, but we really stand behind that. We've talked, and Rod in his interview talked about, if there's no money and there's no league, then there is no game. But he wants to talk about moving forward with confidence and what we've developed over the last 150 years. Let's dialogue with those globally who we respect and have, what they've achieved in our sport. If a visiting team wants to play here, stand proud and invite them to play our game. I mean, I do worry, and Rod talked a lot about this on the interview, that the Canadian, I understand wanting to have the pride of the game, right? And I got absolutely, and like I said, we are not XFL rule marks, like we just want football. What do you think about that? And just like that could be kind of the death knell of the CFL, just wanting to stand too proud of what they have.
I admire the tradition that they've had up there. I mean, I love seeing the historic players that have come through, like Warren Moon, Doug Flutie, and other players of that sort. But, there's a time and a place to adapt and to move forward if you want to make things sustainable. And, man, I know they want to stand proud. I think those CFL fans are amazing. And it's just a matter of if they want things to keep on going. And like I said before, not compete with the NFL, but become their own entity and to bring more views to the CFL, because I think that's the way to go, actually. I think it is the way to go, just to make sure they can adapt and improve. Because I remember as a player here in the United States, we're thinking, there's always that option. Would you play in the CFL? I'm like, all right, well, I don't have dual citizenship, or I have to get dual citizenship because only a certain amount of American players can be on there. But there's not like, oh my God, we're looking forward to, hey, what are you going to watch today? I'm going to go watch the CFL on TV. You're not into that. But the fact that they can merge and make things work, and hopefully they're open to it as well. I mean, it's just, they can skyrocket. It can be huge for the both leagues platform.
One of the CFL play-by-play guys, Chris Cuthbert, he calls the XFL talks a deal with the devil. I mean, these are, there are hot takes coming out. I mean, And this I would understand if it was Vince McMahon, right? Like I would totally understand. We are, I've watched WWE for my whole life. We know all about Vince McMahon. I would totally agree with that if it was previous management. I think Dwayne, Danny, Redbird, there's so many other things now. I mean, what do you think about that? Where if it was Vince versus, current management and really harsh words calling it a deal with the devil.
I agree. I think it's a little too harsh. With Vince, I mean, I never got a chance to meet him. I got a chance to meet his son.
Yeah, Shane was
Shane
around.
during their Washington game. And, and they seem to be on the same page as everybody else. But I think with Dwayne and Danny Garcia being in charge, I don't think it's going to be the same thing anymore at all. I think it's better for long term. I don't think the deal with the devil is the right thing to say, because if anything, I feel like the pandemic might have really exposed the CFL when it comes to their financial things, but and it's not fair to the fans, not fair to the players. It's just it happened, and a lot of people had no control. For example, for us, that last game in Houston, we were getting ready for the next game against New York, and suddenly that was it. So it's just a matter of everyone's got to be open to it. I think people are a little bit prideful. And as they should be to an extent, because they love their sport. They love their CFL. We love our XFL. And they just got to come to the table and hopefully put egos aside and make things work if they want to survive.
Yeah, even some of the owners, Alouette's owner, Gary Stern, was talking. He's saying, the CFL most certainly needs help. I'm open to it. If something good comes from it, fantastic. If it doesn't, we'll have learned a lot and maybe got different ideas on what we can incorporate. I mean, the problem with that and what Rod said is, if there is no money, there is no we'll learn some stuff for next season. I mean, we're really at the question of if this season's going to happen, if the vaccine's going to roll out in Canada. I mean, I think that's the worrying thing. It's like, well, yeah, it's great if we get there, but I just don't get what the CFL's leverage is at this point.
I agree. I don't know what their leverage is. And I think it's all smoke that's coming out that you look back on it as you take a step back and you look at it, you're like, okay, I don't know why they're saying all this stuff. And when there's so much going on, there's also so much uncertainty. So it's just a matter of time and see what happens. But I mean, it does not hurt either league to just sit down and talk like what they're doing. And hopefully that's exactly what they're doing and not just saying that they're coming to talk and nothing's happening. That's the worst thing for all of us, is that they're saying things or they're putting things out there and nothing's really happening behind the curtain.
So a couple quick last notes about CFL stuff, and then we're going to get into all the other XFL. Calgary Stampeders have announced they're signing Nick Hawley. He's a former Roughnecks player, standout. He was in the spring league. We covered him. His twin brother, he's the twin brother of current Miami's Dolphins linebacker and former Stampeder Nate Hawley, and he was the CFL's 2019 most outstanding rookie. So, there's a ton of XFL players going to the NFL. The last note, I want to get your thoughts on this. Jake Henry, he's a friend of the show. His conspiracy, he's all into conspiracy theories. TSN, which is the Canadian Sports Network, but the one of the ones, they're playing the XFL ESPN 30 for 30 documentary. And he's like, is that a sign that they're moving towards a TV deal? I just want to make sure we know about that. What do you think about them playing the XFL 30 for 30 documentary in Canada?
Well, it doesn't help their cause and trying to make sure there's nothing going on. I think that's interesting for them to be playing over there. Maybe it's to get the fans excited, maybe to buy into it more. Well played, I should say. Well played. And we'll see what happens from there. And it should be an interesting documentary.
Yeah, Jake, we appreciate you saying that. Jake's into all the conspiracy theories. Go give him a follow.
That's awesome.
We're going to take a break. We're going to get into all the XFL. There is actually a lot of other XFL news, and we're going to talk about Ernesto, what he has going on, and everything after the break. Yeah, Ernesto and I were talking. Yeah, that 30 for 30, I think it's the one that was played before. That was kind of what really ticked Vince off into even wanting to do. That's kind of the word on the street, is that they did that 30 for 30 on the fall of the XFL in 2001, and then Vince really got motivated again. At least that's what I read back in 2019 and said, hey, I'm going to try to make another go at this. Did you ever hear about any of that, those rumors?
Yeah, I heard the rumors too. And I mean, it makes sense. I mean, the guy's very prideful and has a very good established, company as far as the WWE. So, I mean, when pride kicks in, sometimes it just sparks something, and he got it going. And we love the fact that when he brought it back, we were hoping he was standing by saying, this is going to work. This is going to be here for a long time. So, yeah, we all heard the same thing. And we're not surprised. I mean, if we were in that position, yeah, I'm sure a light would have been fired right there. So,
a couple other XFL things. The XFL.com website has been updated to reflect kind of all the CFL talks. If you go to the FAQ section, it talks about, planning's on hold. We're trying to, figure out all this stuff. So I had posted that on Twitter this week. It got a lot of traction that way just because, the site doesn't get updated that much right now. So it is good to note that they're doing that. One note I want to ask you about, and it's okay if you don't have an opinion. We are big Washington football team fans here at the podcast. Obviously, we have Taylor Heineke, coming off the Battlehawks. Fitzpatrick going to Washington football, signing this 1 year, $10 million thing. What do you think about Fitzmagic going to Washington football team?
Oh, I love it. I've always been a big fan of, Fitzmagic and the way he plays. I mean, yeah, the record doesn't show if ours is wins or losses, but if you want someone that's going to put a spark in an organization that needs it, it's him. It's him, the bearded wonder, I call him. So it's interesting. So a guy from Harvard, I love it, from small school. And, just the fact that he's able to still play. I feel at times, looking at his career, he's playing for, I think on his 10th team, if I'm wrong. Right.
It's 9th or 10th. Yeah, it's a ton.
9th or 10th. Yeah. I mean, I can relate to him because in arena football, I've been already on so many teams because of most of the time they failed or, they just gone under. And so I've been on so many teams. So in fact, when I was in Seattle, there was someone that was asking me, they're like, how long have you been playing? I'm like, well, that'll be in my 9th year at the time. And they're like, what teams were you on? I'm like, well, man, bring out this list. It's a long list here. So, so I love the fact that he's there. I've always been a big fan of underdog teams. And, I have a special place for Washington because they are the only NFL team to ever have an MVP kicker in the 80s. So
really,
yeah, and it was a straight on, yeah, the old dinosaur. That he's the only. I think it was 1982. It was the strike year, and he won the most valuable player of the year. It was the kicker. It was a straight on kicker.
There you go,
Mark Mosley. There you go, Mark Mosley. I remember
Mark Mosley. Well, what I like about it, in all honesty, is what they did with, and I know this is where we get a little XFL Markcasting. This is where I get a little being a Mark, but you had Fitzmagic in Miami with Tua. They brought Tua in after a while. Now we have Taylor Heineke. Maybe you bring Fitzy in as kind of that blanket, and maybe halfway through the season, maybe he could get a little play. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping to get a little, you sign Taylor to a 2-year deal. It's not a crazy big deal, but it is, it's a couple million here and there. I mean, they obviously see something in him at least as a backup.
Right.
And so that's my hope. We will definitely be following Washington football this year. I think today it's supposed to be coming. I bought a Taylor Heineke Washington football jersey. So we're very all in awesome. on Washington football in here. So, I mean, am I crazy in those thoughts, or what do you think about Taylor potentially getting some playtime?
No, I think you hit it right on the nail there because you have to make the best of your opportunities. And I played against Taylor Heineke. He was a backup in St. Louis, but you never know. And that's the thing. That's the beauty of this sport, is that you never know on any one of these teams. Just because everyone's like, okay, that's the starter, you don't know what the second or third stringer, what they're going to make out of it, because they make the best of their opportunity. So I think Fitzmagic is a blanket. You need to have a veteran presence there. And if he's open to learning, and he keeps getting better, I think he's the future. And I think it's awesome to see an XFL player to be there and perform so well.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. Mike Mitchell reported Baltimore Ravens signed XFL defenders Brian Corey. I'm not going to say that right. They signed him. So that's 38 former XFL players on NFL rosters. A couple other notes. Sadly, the passing of Rusty Tillman this week. He was a former 2001 New Jersey Hitmen's coach. He also coached for the Seahawks as well. He was one of the assistant coaches there. I saw a lot of news about that this week with Rusty Tillman just being passed. I wanted to make sure we acknowledge that. Any thoughts on that? Do you have any comments on that?
No, just it's unfortunate. It's been a rough year for a lot of people, and hopefully rest in peace.
Yeah, the final note on this, and this is Reid speculating a little bit. We have Redbird Capital. They just bought into Fenway Sports Group a couple weeks ago, $750 million. Fenway Sports just added this week LeBron James as a partner in that, and so you're getting a lot of pieces together, and so I mean, there's nothing really concrete right now. It said they're also kind of like finalizing that deal because we had announced the Fenway deal with Redbird, but I mean, there's a tremendous amount of money behind this league now. Does that, as someone that dealt with the XFL before, do you feel better about ownership now? I think we probably talked about this when you were on before, but just the amount of money and influence, and they're continuing to grow. They've got like $4 billion in assets behind them. Vince was a big entrepreneur, but he did run the XFL like a mom and pop shop, is kind of what we've said. That's how he ran the WWE for years. Am I wrong in that assessment? And what do you think about the Redbird stuff?
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think you're right, because he did run it like a mom and pop, and it was his baby, his thing, and that's what he wanted to do. But Redbird Capital, hopefully, they just keep on doing what they're doing. They keep on bringing this revenue and stuff. But I think it's going to be a better ownership than it was before. I think having that tie to the WWE is always great. Maybe not as much as now, but The Rock is there. You have The Rock. There's got to be some sort of WWE element to it. I'm very shocked about LeBron going to the Boston, because I'm pretty sure he was a New York Yankees fan, if I remember. That's what I remember hearing. Yep. But, well, we'll see what happens. Hopefully they do well there.
You're absolutely right. I saw that he had some big photo of him with holding a hat up or something. You're absolutely spot on with that he, but I mean, look, he went from Cleveland and then he's,
you're right.
He follows the money.
You're right.
One quick spring league note, and I want to get into Ernesto's stuff here because we're kicking off with indoor football too. Spring league this week, Pocket Pressure Media, they're new, kind of covering some alt stuff. I've seen them post on Facebook too. The spring league, according to them, Brian's going to be coming on the show here in a couple weeks. CEO Brian Woods of the spring league to talk about their plans. Apparently, they are making the move and picking up some USFL trademarks for some of the teams. The New Orleans Breakers, Houston Gamblers, Memphis Showboats, Michigan Panthers, Pittsburgh Maulers, and Tampa Bay Bandits. So there's like 6 teams, just like they had. So it is interesting. We covered the spring league last year. They were doing the bubble thing. They just had like the Jousters and that was our team. I can't remember. Like the Conquerors and stuff. It was just like kind of like random teams. But if they were to go, I don't know if I love all those cities because they're really kind of east side, whatever. Do you watch the spring league at all? Have you checked any of that stuff out?
I watched, briefly because, as you mentioned, Brian Corey, the snapper, in fact, his first professional game was in one of my indoor games. So I got him the job at the San Diego Strike Force, and he was my first snapper in 2019. So that was his first professional debut. So I was following him. He's a good friend of ours, and he trains with us, and very hardworking guy. But that's about it. I didn't really pay too much attention to Spring League. I think it was a nice little platform for guys to get some playing time and everything. So it's interesting to see that the USFL, some of those names, I'm right with you. I don't like those cities where they're at. I don't think they'd be as successful. But it's interesting to see that what could be, and we'll see what happens.
Well, and Spring League, I mean, your friend Matt Mangle, he holds now the world, or it's the Spring League record for the longest field goal kick, and he was on the winning Generals with Brian Scott, friend of the show. So that's good. I like building this community of, friends and seeing people and, Matt's signing up in the CFL. What's going on? Oh, Ernesto's doing, I love being involved in this from the small perspective that we are. I want to hear more about what you have going on here coming up. And I also want to hear about how it's been going, getting ready for it with everything going on. So what do you have? What are you training for right now?
Well, right now I'm training for the basically this year coming up, the IFL season. I'll be playing for the Arizona Rattlers, one of the most historic arena franchises that's been around in the history of there. And just being ready and getting ready and balancing between combines and going to practices, training with arena football, so that's on a whole nother level there. It's just trying to get ready for the arena season because of the fact that at least I'm doing something. I'm keeping myself very active before we hear any news, or hopefully sometime soon, about the XFL. And that's one thing as a kicker, I want to make sure I'm always active, because practicing, going to the field all the time and practicing around other guys, yeah, you're working on your craft, but I think you need to be able to stay in the environment where there's fans, there's a game-like situation. So keeping myself busy in the IFL is going to be really, really fun. Looking forward to it. It'll be my 10th year in arena football, and be able to play for a winning franchise that I haven't been on in a long time. It's going to be really, really fun, because I've played Arizona at 17 times, and each time it was a bad, bad loss each time. I think I was on 2 teams where they broke the record of most points that they scored on. So that's I'm glad to be on the other side of that. So I think the IFL is going to be very, very fun. There's great athletes there. I was one of the ambassadors to be able to play in the XFL that a lot of the guys were looking up to, and I think it's great. I think people shouldn't sleep on the indoor football league. There's a lot of great players. It's fun. It's fast paced. I think they're just coming out with a new TV deal pretty soon. So right now, getting ready for the indoor football league, it's never easy because of the balls are like composite Walmart footballs or like Nerf balls, and be able to control that from certain distances is not fun. It is definitely not fun. But I'm a veteran of the game. It's just a matter of a fine tuning of the swing here and there. No different than golf. So right now, that's what we're looking forward to as far as the the 2021 IFL season. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. So I hope everyone can tune in and look for some players and make the jump either to the NFL or the XFL or XFL-CFL. Who knows what happens a year ago.
No, I definitely think now with everything that we will definitely be looking at coverage of that with, in all earnestness with everything going on. I did put on the episode graphics, I did put the Dragons and then the Arizona Rattlers logo behind you. So I wanted to make sure we got an homage to that as well. When is the league, when's the season kicking off? How does all that go? Cause I'm going to be diving way into this year when all this, the CFL stuff blows here.
I believe the first few games are going to be at the end of April. I know that our first game is until May 16th against the Northern Arizona Wranglers, and we report April 30th, so I think it's a 2-week training camp. But I think the first 2 games will be played probably towards the end of April with the champions of the Sioux Falls Storm. They're fun to watch. They're like the Patriots of the indoor football league, the way they're ran. And they've been champions so many times, and it's fun to see that. So they'll be playing pretty soon, and we'll be kicking off, I believe, May 16th for our game. And they'll be running all the way till August.
And you said they're working on a TV deal?
They're working on a TV deal. I know that YouTube, they play their games mostly there. And then they're working on a TV deal that hopefully they'll be announcing pretty soon. So hopefully I don't get in trouble for saying that, but we'll see. We'll find out. It'll be fun.
Yeah, well, no, because I mean that. And I think for people now, we're getting done with fan control football. We're getting done with all this stuff. I do think there's going to be a really desire for that. I mean that. And so we'll definitely be covering that. Are they doing no fans? Do you know? Have they even announced that yet? Maybe they haven't even announced.
Well, the Frisco Fighters in Texas, they just announced a couple of days ago they're going to be playing in front of full capacity of all the fans, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that works. But they were the first ones, of course, Texas, right? That was the first team to announce that, and I think also Massachusetts as well. But when I was in Arizona about a week ago for an NFL Combine, I mean, everyone's wearing masks, but it felt like Arizona was quite normal. Everyone was all out and about. The airports were filled. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's why they moved the season back. So we would have been started about a month before. But I think they moved it back because I can see that Arizona might play in front of the fans too. And I would love that because Arizona fans, it's packed, it's loud, and they need that. They love that.
Perfect. Well, yeah, I got that on my notes to kind of figure out here coming up, doing some coverage of that because I think it's going to be we'll see what CFL does here coming up. I mean, we'll certainly find out, but it could be a long summer without coverage of the Markcast. We're going to take a break. We're going to go right into our Robert Turbin interview. Robert Turbin played for the Beasts. They lost the game last Saturday, but he has told me that he is going to be playing with the Glacier Boys for the Fan Control Football Championship game coming up. I am going to warn you, normally we're a very explicit free podcast. Robert, there is some language. So if you're with someone, small children, we didn't feel like censoring him was really in the spirit of the interview. So I just wanted to give you fair warning, but he does have, first off, great. It's a fantastic interview. Lots of insights about his good friend, Russell Wilson, who did not go to the Bears this week. And Robert talked a lot about why he thinks that wasn't going to happen. He kind of predicted that. And so there really is some nuggets in there as well about that. So we're going to do Robert's interview, and then we're going to come back and wrap up with some Fan Control Football thoughts from Ernesto. So we'll be right back.
Welcome to the show, Robert Turbin. Former Seattle Seahawks player. We're both Seahawks fans, and currently you're down in the bubble, FCF for the Beasts. Sorry about the game last week, man.
It happens, man. That's football.
Yeah.
You win some, you lose some, but he lived to fight another day.
They you came in, scored right away. That had to feel good. How was that first drive going down in?
Oh man, it felt good. You know, keep in mind that was my first carry since 2018, you know, and I hadn't had much practice time here. I was quarantining when I got here for 7 days, and we practiced on Thursday, helmets only, no pads. And practice here is pretty, it's definitely not like an NFL practice. You know, I think I had maybe like 3 or 4 total full speed reps, and they were all like 1-on-1, you know, running routes against linebackers, you know. So it's not like, you know, I had any practice contact, and I'm a big practice guy. I'm a big like preparation, like, you know.
You're not like Allen Iverson with practice. You're the opposite of Allen Iverson.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, to get in there and bang a little bit, but get in the end zone on that first play was a pretty special moment.
Talk about that face mask issue that happened. It seems like things were getting a little chippy there.
When my helmet came off?
Yeah, when the guy ripped your helmet off.
I guess they felt like that was the only way they could take me down. I mean, I don't know. Look, I don't know if you guys can see, like, they cut my eye right here when they did that shit. Can you see that?
Wow.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, we can.
Kind of look like the Wolverine a little bit, man. I'm like, damn, what's wrong with you guys? You know?
Because even on the first TD in, I mean, you carried like three of the guys into the end zone with you. I mean, do you feel like were they ready for that level of physicality? I mean, coming from the NFL in, you know, they've been playing against each other, you know, fan controlled players, you know, for the last couple weeks. How do you feel like coming in, you know, you obviously have been used to heavier hits, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the other guys expected. I know I have obviously pretty good size on me, so you know, most of the fellas felt like that. Maybe I'd be pretty physical. I think the thing that shocked him the most was my agility and elusiveness. If you watch that toss play, you know, made a couple guys miss, and that's just a part of playing the running back position. But I certainly wanted to let my presence be known and kind of let these guys know, you know, who I am. You know, even on that second toss play, like just kind of reading it, there was probably an opportunity to cut back again. But I had kind of predetermined that I was going to go around the edge and lower my shoulder and put my face mask into somebody and just kind of let my presence be known. You know, sometimes as a runner, that's what it's about. You know, like there are times where you can make a guy miss, but you won't, just because you want to let him know, like, hey, it's going to be a long day today, fucking with me. So that's just part of the game.
Do you think that there was maybe a target, like with you and, you know, Josh Gordon's there? Do you think there's like a target on you both specifically because you come from the NFL? Oh yeah. I mean, these guys here are competitive, man, and you'd be surprised at how hard they work. I mean, you know, you got a couple guys who are just kind of like, you know, here they don't really get it, but there's some guys here, man, real effort, training in the off season. Some of these guys are out of college and didn't get opportunities last year because of the roster cuts made by the NFL. And
and NFL scouts not being able to, go and watch, everybody as it pertains to like their pro days and stuff like that. So these guys are young and they're hungry and they're, searching for opportunities, similar to me, as a veteran guy who wants to, show the league that, he can still play and want an opportunity to get back. And so, we're equally hungry, but, being in the NFL and playing in the NFL, myself and Josh and even Johnny, a little bit of a target on our backs. They want to see how they, how they line up against, some guys who've been there.
I'm curious how all this went down with you and Marshawn and the Beast. I know Bob Menery, had Manziel from the get-go, and then he brought in, Josh Gordon. And then it seemed like Marshawn was finally like, well, if they can do that, I'm going to, tit for tat. Or how did that all go down?
So I got a call from my manager, Matt Rogers, who used to represent Russell Wilson for the first 7 years of his career. We've been working together over the last couple years. And he called me and says, hey, you should get in this fan control football league. Have you heard of it? Have you seen anything? I said, yeah, man, I saw a couple of highlights, but I don't know too much about it. He's like, look, I think this will be a nice, gateway and setup for you to get back into the league. Let's make this happen. So, knowing that Marshawn was one of the owners of one of the teams, and I have a good relationship with Renee Montgomery as well, who's the owner of the same team. But I'm close with Marshawn. I hit him up and I said, hey, what's good? How would you feel about me playing for your team? And he's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, how would you feel about me playing for your team? He's like, man, don't play with me, Turbo. I'll fuck around and have you on a flight in 24 hours. Those are literally his words. He's like, I'll fuck around and have you on a flight in 24 hours. And literally, I was on a flight in 24 hours. Yeah, because the sooner the better. I had to quarantine for 7 days, so the sooner the better. So, yeah, we talked on like a Monday night, and I got here early Wednesday morning, and there it was,
That is one thing that interests me. We've obviously covered the whole league, leading up and then through. And, if there's, season 2, they've talked about not having to deal with that bubble situation potentially and being able just to fly in more players. I do think is a very exciting possibility where, like you come in and it's like, okay, he can't do the practice. We got to wait the 7 days, when Manziel left and then came back in. I mean, there's just been a lot of dealing with all those protocols where I do think it'll be very exciting when they could just, like you said, Marshawn could just get you on a plane and then come in and, potentially be on a, professional football field. That weekend is a pretty incredible thing nowadays.
Right. And you know what? I've been really impressed with how everything's been ran here. The professionalism of it, the organization, and they talked about how they had some rough spots, in the beginning, and some things were, some mistakes were made and stuff like that. But by now, by the time when I got here, it seemed like, man, they had a really good rhythm going. It was smooth. And the fact that they're able to even put this bubble together and have food consistently and laundry, just the small things, laundry and stuff like that, and the housekeeping aspect of it. And, you can order food and all that kind of stuff. And the weight room is set up and the equipment, and they have a media area, for their show and commentary and et cetera. When I was quarantining, I'm telling you, every day, same time in the morning, breakfast at the door, lunch at the door, dinner, at the door. I came into the room, I got a full case of water and a big old box of granola bars and a bunch of fruit, just for me, while I'm in here quarantining. And that is, it just shows how well this thing has been run and how well they're taking care of us and the rest, all the players here and the people who are working here as well. So it's a pretty good, it's been run pretty good.
It seems like, they might have saw what happened. I don't know if you're familiar with it, what happened with the spring league down in San Antonio, where it was described, the food they were getting was described as like the Fire Fest of football food. And so the players were going out, hitting the Riverwalk, hitting Whataburger because they weren't getting adequate food. Seems like they've learned their lesson. Do you think that's showing that they care about the players?
Well, here's the thing, keep in mind that this league took 7 years to develop and put together, so even though they still made some mistakes early on, I mean, I'm sure they've thought about all the scenarios. I'm sure they've looked at other leagues and where they succeeded and where they failed, how they could do things differently so they don't make those same mistakes. And so, big shout out to Ray, Austin, and everybody else who's involved, man, for really, taking the time and really being hands-on and putting this thing together the right way.
So even though you guys didn't win last night, they're calling it like a compensatory game or whatever next week. So are you going to be involved in all that next weekend with the Beast against?
Yeah, I'll play. I'm here. I'm here for one mission really, and I mean, and it's more than that because there's opportunities, to expand your brand and do some things off the field. That's really what this league is about, is really giving the players an opportunity to, hey, if you have a clothing line, if you got this, if you got that, man, this is an opportunity for you to advertise that and grow your brand, perhaps, using the FCF. But at the end of the day, I'm here to play football, man, and get some film out there and hopefully that can lead to an opportunity for me to get back into the NFL.
There have been some various rule changes from game to game that we've been critical about from time to time. How as a player do you handle those rule changes when you see them happen, game to game sometimes?
Yeah. I got to be honest. I've been here for such a short time. I've only played in one game. So we had a situation yesterday where it was a power play. We're down in our own end zone area. And it was like, it's 1st and 10. You got to get a first down to recover the onside kick. It's like an onside kick. Right. But the defense is not allowed to blitz on a power play. But they blitzed their linebacker and we weren't able to execute, and everybody's dropping F-bombs and shit and, cussing the refs out, and everybody's pissed off. And I'm just kind of sitting there like, well, what happened? What's going on? They're not supposed to blitz on a power play, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, everybody keeps, I'm like, man, I'm asking about the rules every other play. And they're like, man, they change every week. We're trying to keep up with it. So I think that's one of the things as the league probably, could be done better, could improve on is getting the rule book together and sticking to those rules. But it is the first season. If there is a time to play with the rules and change them from game to game, it's this one. And I'm sure when the second season comes around, it'll be much more solidified.
Coming from, obviously you in the NFL and other players that have played, there's XFL guys in the league and stuff too. When you see a little bit of that not mismanagement, but whatever with the rules and all that, do you just kind of shrug it off and go, I'm just here to play football? I mean, you're just kind of, you're over that and you just say, well, I'm just here to do my job and it doesn't matter?
Yeah. For me personally, yeah. Some guys, get pretty intense, for me, I understand, these guys are trying to put together a league, a business, that's not easy to do. And, some of the things that come with that is trial and error. And so I understand it. I understand it totally. So it doesn't bother me at all.
I had a question about, where, the Zappers had obviously brought in Josh Gordon and Manziel, and then, you with the Beast. The two teams that are playing in the championship game have not had any of those advantages, right, that you could deem to do that. And, I think it's cool. We're advocates for the players. I'm advocates for any players getting more tape, but it did speak to me that, you had Bob Menery and, all the powers of anyone bringing in all this stuff. And yet a team of YouTubers that own the Wild Aces, they're in the championship game. I mean, thoughts on that and just kind of how all that worked out with the championship game?
Yeah, the roster is really, that's another part that's confusing too. Aside from the rule changes is the roster, the way the roster fluctuates week to week. Like, there were some players on our team who literally the day before the game, all of a sudden we're on the Wild Aces or we're on another team. They weren't playing for the Beast anymore. Everybody's looking around like, what happened? We need these guys. These are good guys. There's some good players up here, who can play, and so when you take away like some of the good players and just all of a sudden put them on another team, that's gonna be tough, and I think you got a chance to see, like, even in this league, it's funny how the game is kind of won and lost in the trenches still, It's just like, we played the game that we played. What happened? They were able to get a bunch of pressure on us, right? And we weren't able to do that on the other side. They were able to get stops on defense, and we weren't able to do that, on the other side, man. And so, yeah, the Beasts and the Zappers, got the advantage of a couple of NFL guys, but the other teams were able to put together, I think, a better overall roster as it pertains to players at other positions.
About that, there were times when every week they did a player draft. Do you think like players switching teams like that every week seemingly might have upset some team chemistry? Yeah, you can't develop any team chemistry if you're playing for a brand new team every week. I thought it was really weird. I told the guys, I said, look, the 2 games that I'm here for, I just want to play for the Beast, and that's it. And I don't want to switch jerseys and switch teams and stuff like that. I don't understand the concept of it necessarily. I think perhaps the fans should be able to have, one big draft in the beginning of the season, and shit, man, let them like make some other types of transactions like trades or releases. Like, you know what? I don't want this guy anymore. Let's cut him, fuck it. And then he can go to another team that way, but it is the first season, like I said, but I think every week having guys change teams, probably not the best way to do it, in my opinion. Right.
Yeah, I mean that's feelings we've had too. I wanted to ask about just the talent level that you've seen. Obviously, the brief time the week there. Quentin Flowers, right? Your guys' quarterback. We've covered them all through the XFL and everything else. I mean, what do you think about the talent level of the other guys that you're working with out there?
Yeah, I've been impressed. I've been impressed by their work ethic. There's a lot of talented players here, and the cool thing is that they want to learn. I've been able to develop some cool relationships already and talk to some guys, and they come up to me and ask questions, and I ask them questions too, and they want to know how to get better. How can they improve? What kind of things that they can work on to be able to get an opportunity to play in the pros and stuff like that, man. So some good talent level up here. I think you'll see a good number of guys get a shot at the league this upcoming season.
Very cool. Speaking of the league, you mentioned Russell Wilson. I have to ask you, what do you think is going to happen, man? Do you think he's staying in Seattle, or do you think he might be on the move?
I think that it's tough. I think at this particular moment in time, right now, today, I think it's a real 50-50 shot right now. I didn't feel that way a couple of weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago, I was pretty sold on him staying in Seattle. And, I have to be honest, I'm not as confident.
Do you have a relationship with Russell at all?
Yeah. I just talked to him a couple of days ago. I was the best man in his wedding. Him and I are really close. I'll die for Russell. Wow. I'll take a bullet for him. And so we were roommates for 4 years. We're really close. I don't really advertise it. I don't normally tell people because I don't care to. Right. He's really my friend, so when somebody's really your friend, you're not concerned about the clout that comes with letting people know, like, Russell's my boy, and we kick it in the off season, and we FaceTime at least once a month, and text message, every other week and shit like that. That don't care. Like, what? That doesn't bring me any sort of satisfaction at all. That's my boy for real. Like, I don't care, and it's vice versa on the other side. But that situation's been crazy. I think that it's 50-50 right now. And I also think that this season, particularly this season, I think he'll be in Seattle. But I think next season he won't.
Interesting stuff. Another question I had about former players you played with. I know you went to Utah State. I actually went to Southern Utah. And I know you were probably there with Bobby Wagner at the time. Does Bobby Wagner still have the Ninja Turtle collection?
Always. Always, man. Always.
A Madden 99 player with a Ninja Turtle collection. It's crazy.
Man, it's like an alter ego when he gets up there on the field, man. He just turns into fucking I don't know, Leonardo.
Shredder?
Yeah, one of those guys. And just balls.
Yeah. Bobby's good. Bobby's a special guy. So, Robert Turbin, we'd love to have you on. Thanks for coming on, man, and chatting with us about fan control football and some former Seahawks memories. We appreciate your time, man.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for making the time. Means a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Stay safe, man.
Anytime.
We'll be watching it this weekend. We'll be cheering for you guys.
All right, my man.
Cool. Thanks.
Peace.
So we really want to thank Robert Turbin for coming on, and thank you to Rod and Kenneth as well. I hope I thanked them all earlier. I can't remember now. As we continue recording here, I really want to hear Ernesto's thoughts as someone that plays arena football, indoor football, all this stuff. What do you think of fan control football?
It's a tragedy there's no kicking. I should say that. It's a tragedy because a lot of the indoor game, not the field goal or extra point aspect, but the kickoff it's really exciting because that is a brutal kickoff. Whether it was the AFL or arena, you're going to see a lot of touchdowns being scored. It's fun to see that. But I think it's great. I think it's interesting to see a different kind of football and let the fans be more interactive. I know a lot of the players that are on those teams, a lot of great arena players that don't be probably getting ready for the IFL season. So it was interesting to see that Johnny Manziel was there, and I was like, seems a little, if it was just me, I think he's off. I don't think he was as accurate as I thought he would be. I'm like, oh, wow, this is a little bit different. But I've seen that a lot from guys making the transition from outdoor to the indoor game. It's a lot faster. It's a shorter field. Your reaction's different. And, vice versa from the indoor game to the outdoor. It's never that easy. But I think it's I did watch a game or two, and it was different to see something like that. But as a kicker, I'd like to see a little bit more of the special teams come into play.
No, I mean that in all earnestness. So when fan control first kicked off the week before, they were doing the test game, and then it ended up it got leaked somehow. I don't know if they meant it to be or not, but it was on Twitch, and so I was watching, and it was them, and they were basically doing like a mock game, a scrimmage, but they were calling it, and that was their big thing. And then even the first week of the real season, that was their big thing, was like, well, if you're here for kicking, like, we got nothing for you. Like, no one ever watched football and thought, well, I want to hear what that kicker's doing. And I thought, you guys that's what we said from the beginning, I would want to cast as wide a net as possible for any potential people to want to see it. And, I mean, I'm speaking to the lives it every day, but, many a time in football lore have been, won and lost by, field goal kicks, extra point kicks, all these things. And so, yeah, I totally agree. Not only to eliminate that whole aspect of the game, but then it was almost like mocking on there, where it was like, well, we don't who gives a F about this? We don't care. And I thought, man, and it was like the first 5 minutes of the broadcast. I'm like, why would welcome everybody in, like, F you. Like, we don't, it seemed a very, we've had questionable stuff all season with them in the league and everything. But I really did think that was a bad look. And I felt bad because, we got your friend, Matt's a friend, Taylor Rusley. I mean, I got friends of all these XFL guys. The kickers are like the best. I was thinking about that when you guys posted that photo. Like, you guys are the best kind of bunch, and everyone's doing stuff, and you're interactive, and you're talking, and you're posting. And I'm like, man, I've just felt bad for all you guys that it was like a slap in the face. Did you freeze? Did I make, I got so animated, I froze Ernesto.
Well, I mean, it was interesting to see that because, I mean, I in playing in the arena game, games are lost and won by extra points because there's such a high scoring.
Yeah.
In fact, I always tell young kickers going into football, like, look, do not worry about field goals. It's a 50-50 shot anyways. The goalposts are so small already, but you got to make your extra points. You got to be 92% bet on your extra points because you're going to be getting these 70 point games that it comes down to that 1 point. And even the drop kick is worth 4 points in arena. It just hasn't been done in a long time. It's one of those kind of like things. But I mean, it's great for the position players to have that, something like that. And it looked fun, but I was confused with after they scored a touchdown, because I remember going to like 7-on-7 camps in high school. I remember seeing that little platform for like the quarterbacks. So I was confused about those rules like that. So, I mean, I was confused. I wish I would have learned a little bit more rules and understood that, but I can see how people were confused when we had scored a touchdown in the XFL. Everyone was like, so what happens next? You know, we got a 1, 2, 3. It was all those kind of things, but it's interesting. I hope that we'll see how big it really gets and everything. But yeah, from the kicking world, we were not a big fan of it. It's something that we're like, all right, it's on YouTube. All right, there's no kicking. I'm good.
Yeah. Some notes. We're getting into the big championship game this week. We are going to do a serious deep dive with the podcast and with our listeners after the championship, if we will continue to cover this. We've had a love-hate relationship with the league. We've had league management on. We've had many of fans and players, team owners on, and have gotten not a lot of warm reception from the league. So we're going to see. I thought it was weird. We teased Robert Turbin's interview, and that was not shared. Robert scored in his first play. We talked about that in the interview. He got really beat up, but it seemed like they were really, letting him have it. My takeaway was it felt like, Manziel came back. He was in, played whatever, went home to get emergency dental surgery. And it did seem like they brought him back in just to get that Manziel to Josh Gordon connection reception pass, and then they pulled him again. It seems like it's like, okay, let's get him in, let's get the Sports Center clip, and then let's get him back out. And I don't like that we've been critical of that. We had Braden Smith on last week's show, and he was one of the quarterbacks that played under Manziel. He was the one that won the game with Josh Gordon. He threw the TD reception at the end of the game to win the game. The clip went everywhere. Fan Control Football shared it everywhere. And Braden was not tagged or mentioned in any of that. It was, hey, look at Josh Gordon, look at this touchdown. And so that's where I want to see growth from Fan Control Football, is if you're going to bring in these veteran players, highlight Josh Gordon, definitely get the Sports Center stuff, right? But give the guy your homegrown talent that threw the touchdown pass. Let's give him some publicity as well. What do you think about that?
I agree. I think it's always great to have your hometown players. It's what fans gravitate towards the most. But I mean, I've seen a situation like that in 2012 and 13 when Terrell Owens was playing for the Allen Wranglers in the IFL. I remember playing against him. I was like, there's Terrell Owens. He's going for a fade. I don't think Terrell realized there's a wall there. He forgets there's a wall. And I remember that. I was like, oh, yeah. We always say in arena, the wall is undefeated every time. So, but, he was an ownership of the Allen Wranglers at the time. They're no longer exist. But you got to give, your hometown guys that spotlight. And I just didn't like, I'm with you. I didn't like the fact that they did that. I think it's, if you're going to leave Manziel and leave him in the whole time,
Yep.
But that's just my take on that.
It is interesting in the championship game. All the teams that all the NFL stars, Turbin is going to be playing supposedly for the Glacier Boys, but you had Manziel, Josh Gordon, Turbin, all them. Those teams did not win. It's the Wild Aces that were owned by a bunch of YouTubers. Greg Miller's been on the show, friend of the show, and then the Glacier Boys that's owned by Quavo and all of them. But all the stuff, the Bob Menery and Marshawn and all these calling up all the people, and people stressed for weeks about what's fair and all this stuff. None of those teams won. It was all the people with all the homegrown talent. So I do really like to see that. And it was a blowout, like the Zappers with Manziel when it was a total blowout this last game. What do you think about the championship game being called the People's Championship, where The Rock, who is the People's Champion, owns the XFL now?
Well, I mean, if it's the People's Champion, and this for the fan control football, right?
Yeah, and they voted on it.
I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense, the fact that, okay, it's for the fans. It's fun, I guess. So it's interesting to see that. I'm going to try to watch that game a little bit. I would have liked to see one of my high school rivals who I played against. He's still playing. He was on the Beast team. Is Troy Evans. Would have loved to have seen him play. So we'll see. It'll be fun. The people's champ, and that'd be interesting. I would like to see that more in the XFL or something like that, but that'd make more sense. But we'll see. It should be fun.
I mean, voted on by the fans, I get it, but I was like, man, you guys realize, and I know that Vince Quinn, he does the FCF Owners Box. They're like just Fantasy Football Podcast. They're great. And they said the same thing. They're like, man, this is like, you guys know that The Rock owns this. Couple just final notes on FCF. I know Ernesto has given us so much time today. The streaming numbers from this week, Jake Henry, who was the one that showed us the 30 for 30 earlier, we talked about, he sent over the streaming numbers. And so the big games this weekend averaged or got 2.3 million views, right? And so you think, man, like that's incredible, right? The average watch time of those views, because they do, the thing, and then like our episode, right? It's like an hour, but the average view is never an hour because some people watch an hour and some people watch 5 seconds. The average watch time of the games, and it was a 5+ hour broadcast, was 5 minutes. That was the average view time for the 2.3 million views. What is your takeaway from that?
It's not very long. It's not very much. I'm glad they show that stuff, because they could have never shown that at all, because 2.3, when you mentioned that, I'm like, that's huge.
Yeah.
But 5 minutes is no different than me watching the highlights on like a YouTube, and it's probably 5 minutes, and that's probably what you're going to get. So I think there needs to be a bit more engagement, something more exciting to being able to probably extend that time. But I want to say it's always the confusion that I think the fans also didn't realize what was going on. Yep. I think they need to understand the game and be more involved, because I'm sure the fans that were watching are the same guys that play Madden and know exactly what plays to call.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So
that's
not very long.
Yeah, they tout the views, but you need to. It's all the picture there. And again, I'm not trying to criticize, but you gotta show the whole picture with that. And the last note is they did cancel the compensatory game. We talked about that a little bit with Kenneth in our interview, because my fear was they were going to have 2 games on this weekend because there's 4 teams. And when they canceled that first game, my fear was those players weren't going to get paid for that game, because they're only the players are only paid down there in fan control football for the games. Sarab, who's the CEO, came out this week. He said they are getting paid for that. They got sent home, but the players are getting paid regardless. So, but I'm glad that we asked those questions, because that's a big difference. Because if I'm in the bubble on Tuesday and I have the option to stay for 4 more days to get, and they're not great paychecks, but if I have the option to stay for 4 days to get a paycheck, I will stay. I mean, not everyone, you can have your own preference, but so I was glad that we asked that, because I feared that we were going to have a spring league thing all over again, where they canceled it and then they sent the players home and they didn't get. So I'm glad about that.
Yeah, I've definitely been in a lot of situations where organizations, they'll send you home and you don't get that paycheck, or you get that paycheck and you better go to the bank quickly before it bounces.
Right. No, well, and because, where you've worked in these, not like it's not all the leagues are created equal, and you're going to get some that don't. I mean, I ordered my Fan Control Football jersey the day that they were announced, whatever. I still don't have it. So I paid $70 to try to support. So we'll see. I mean, they claim it's a delayed whatever, but like that was like 2 months ago, and I don't have that yet. The final note, in honor of Paul not being here, we have our garbage segment, and the only thing I have this week, because I took out everything else, is Cam Newton, who has just signed back to the Patriots this week. He got signed back for a 1-year deal. He was on the I Am Athlete podcast with Chad, and they were talking about Chad Ochocinco, friend of the show, getting Cam Newton back in shape for the game, and basically what the diet that they were going to work on to make sure that Cam didn't get hurt. So I'm just going to play the audio. I don't want to get in trouble playing the video, but we'll listen through this, and it's about a minute and a half, but it's a funny listen.
Listen, I'm gonna get with you, because I'm gonna get you a meal. I'm gonna be a meal prep.
Well, if that's gonna be the case, let me see what the first day meals prep gonna be. What I'm eating for breakfast.
First day meal prep, we're going to McDonald's. Hotcakes with sausage, sausage muffin, a large orange juice.
Okay, what's for my snack?
Then we're going to work out.
What's for my snack?
Pop-Tarts, 6 boiled eggs.
Okay.
What flavor Pop-Tart?
Strawberry, frosted icing.
Okay.
From Publix or Winn-Dixie.
What's for lunch?
Lunch? We're gonna go to Bahama Breeze. Pasta.
Okay.
Jerk chicken pasta, extra chicken, no asparagus.
Say less.
With mushroom.
What's my other snack?
Say less.
So before we get dinner, we got a snack in between.
Yeah, that's
for you. You can throw your little healthy shit in there. Your little rice cakes. Your little rice cakes. I don't know what vegans eat. What vegan? I said it right?
Yeah.
Vegan, whatever your vegetables eat, you can throw it in there. And then dinner, we go ham.
What's ham? We eating the ham?
Nah, no, dinner we going soul food.
Okay.
We going soul food.
Now soul food for the viewers and the people that like, what's your soul food? Your soul
All
food.
right, my soul food, my dish, which I'm gonna put you on because it's gonna create a callus in the body, will prevent no more injuries in 2021. So bake the fried chicken. You can go dark meat, white meat, have you like. For me, I like 3 legs, candy yams, macaroni and cheese, and greens. Sweetwater cornbread and chocolate cake, yellow cake, chocolate icing.
What do you think? What do you think of the Ocho Cinco diet?
I was thinking in my mind, it's either say McDonald's at some point because I remember seeing in those HBO training camp shows, but I was like the Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
I would think that they're building the stomach muscle because that's gonna be rough.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. That's gonna be rough. But to each their own. I didn't even know Cam Newton was a vegan. So I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. Anyway, I just how do you get that in today with everything going on? Ernesto, you have been so gracious putting up with all of our nonsense this week, jumping at the chance, and then with all this crazy CFL stuff and all the notes and everything. And I really appreciate it. Final plug, IFL's coming up here. We're going to have more details on that. Anything else you want to talk about before we let you go?
No, just everyone stay safe. It's always fun to come on this. I love watching your guys' show. So it's an honor to be here. And look forward to the news that's going to come out for the XFL. And hopefully once we hear something as players, I know exactly who I'm going to go to.
Thank you. I appreciate it. If you guys have made it this far, like and subscribe. We're really trying to get the monetization on the channel. We get the ads on the podcast listening, but we'd really like to get the YouTube monetization. So it would make Paul really happy if you would subscribe. Again, we have the Chad Ochocinco giveaway ball. We're almost at 200. We only got to get to 1,000. So it's not like it's a crazy. It's not like we got to get 10 million, whatever. So we're building this. This is a full-time job at this point for me. So I appreciate everyone sticking with us. And thanks again.